Beneath the blood-red sky, in the fallen capital of the Ultras Khalid, the world, and humanity in particular, witnessed a turning point that would divide all of history in two. It happened in a moment of victory, a supposed triumph. While the soldiers cheered, oblivious and drunk on glory, no one realized that the devil was already among them. Mikar was dead. Sir Alone was dead. Both slain swiftly, effortlessly, as if their lives were nothing more than fragile, disposable souls. It had been Weskier all along. He was Weskier. From the very beginning, the devil had stood before them, hidden in plain sight. None of the Imperial soldiers sensed his presence. None but two. Fry Starlight and Snow Lionheart. They had been watching the battlefield from the start, alert to every fluctuation in aura, every tremor of power, expecting the enemy's strike to come at any moment. But they never imagined it would come from behind. In the blink of an eye, the two descended upon Weskier, unleashing everything they had. Fry summoned the black hole aura and amplified himself with dark ascension, while Snow took on his most powerful form, the anointed war state. Together they struck with full force, fully aware of the catastrophe that had just unfolded before their eyes. Their final enemy wasn't Geppetto, nor his puppet. It was the fourth seat, Weskier himself, the upper demon who had chosen this very moment to reveal his true self. Facing their combined assault, Weskier only smiled, that calm, terrifying smile, and raised his hand toward them. The air itself froze. Both of their blades stopped mid-swing, suspended in the air, trapped by an unseen force. The two were stunned, unable to comprehend what was happening. "That's wave manipulation," Fry shouted in disbelief. What Weskier had just done was something beyond comprehension. He had frozen space itself through the manipulation of waves. "You look as though you've seen a ghost, Fry Starlight." Weskier laughed, his tone playful, cold. "This is the first time you've seen me like this, face to face. But we've met hundreds of times already. Don't you remember?" That last line hit like a hammer. He was confirming it. That he had been Aegon all along. Frey's expression hardened. He had acted the moment he sensed Aegon's presence vanish, replaced by something sinister, wrong. But he had never imagined that Aegon Valyrian and Weskier were the same being. He'd suspected the prince before, yes. He'd always known Aegon carried dark secrets. He'd even theorized a connection between the two, thinking Aegon might be Weskier's subordinate or puppet. But the truth was far worse than anything he could have imagined. Now he and Snow were forced to face Weskier, the fourth among the upper demons. A being of unfathomable power. With a mere gesture of his hand, Weskier unleashed a repulsive wave that sent both of them flying. They were thrown back violently, crashing through everything in their path, and didn't regain balance until they had been hurled miles away. All that, from a single wave of his hand. Gritting his teeth, Fry stood up again, his expression darkening with every passing second. He was far stronger now than he had been during his battle with Zebar. He wielded the black hole aura, and the fused might of both his legendary blades. He was confident that if he fought Zebar's replica again, he could defeat it easily. But Weskier was a different kind of monster. Stronger than the replica, stronger than Zebar himself. "What now?" Fry muttered, realizing the gravity of their situation. There was no choice left. He clenched his jaw, then blinked forward through space, reappearing before Weskier in a flash, and struck. But each time his blade neared its target, it would stop, halted by an unseen wall before it could touch the demon. Fry growled, flooding his body with aura, his violet halo burning brighter and brighter. He poured everything he had into that strike, forcing his blade closer to Weskier's neck. But Weskier's expression never changed. Why now of all times?" Fry shouted, his voice filled with fury. His aura tore through the frozen air around Weskier, but the demon caught the Dark Sister effortlessly in his bare hand. "Having trouble understanding what you're seeing, Fry Starlight?" Weskier asked calmly, raising his other hand toward Frey's face. "You're still blind, too blind to see the truth." What followed those words was a cataclysmic eruption of dark aura. Weskier released a roaring beam of power that devoured Fry completely, erasing everything behind him in one overwhelming surge. Snow rushed in to help. But even he, for all his might, could do little. By then, the Imperial soldiers had begun to realize something terrible was happening behind them. The clash between Weskier, Fry, and Snow was no longer hidden. The sounds of cheering and celebration faded, replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence. They watched in awe and terror, as the battlefield they thought they had conquered was torn apart by forces beyond their comprehension. Their triumph turned to unease, then to fear. Under the crimson sky they finally saw him, the demon who hovered above them, with a third eye carved into his forehead, his body drenched in shadow, for horns rising like a crown. His presence couldn't be felt, but it could be known. In the instinctive, primal way prey recognizes a predator. And so the soldiers raised their weapons, ready to fight again. But what happened next was catastrophic. Weskier lifted his hand toward the heavens, and the red sky itself answered his call. In that instant, everyone understood. The sky had not turned crimson by chance. The crimson sky wasn't a natural omen. It was Weskier who had filled it with his countless celestial orbs, a swarm of blood-red stars so vast they blotted out the heavens entirely. There were so many that the sky itself seemed to have turned scarlet. And then, with a single motion of Weskier's hand, the cataclysm began. The orbs descended. Thousands of aura projectiles rained from above like a downpour of blood, leaving no path for escape, no place to hide. It was annihilation. Swift, merciless, absolute. Explosions echoed through Caelid. Flesh and stone alike were torn apart, and amid it all, Weskier's laughter rolled across the battlefield like thunder. No one understood how everything had turned so suddenly. No one could grasp how victory had become slaughter in an instant. And then, things grew even worse. From the opposite side came monstrous howls. And with them, despair. For when the Imperial army marched into Caelid believing they had won, when they thought the war had ended, Weskier had appeared behind them, but in front, another calamity emerged. Across the horizon, a new army advanced. A tide of darkness unlike anything they had faced before. At its forefront stood Beatrice, the demonic witch who had vanished until now, accompanied by Belith, the war demon, and others. Terrifying figures such as Simon Manus, the Hollow, and countless more monstrosities. That overwhelming force struck the Imperials head-on, while Weskier bombarded them from behind. Perfect siege. The Imperial army was trapped like rats in a cage, crushed between two walls of death. Every passing second claimed hundreds of lives. In that hour of extinction, the strongest warriors of the Empire fought with everything they had. The elite class descended into the chaos, desperate to save whoever they could. But it was hopeless. The scene was beyond salvation. The only reason they still drew breath was because Weskier's attention was divided, focused on Fry and Snow, who had barely managed to keep him occupied. Had they failed to restrain him, everyone on the battlefield would have perished within the first minute. It was surreal, unthinkable. How had joy turned to terror? How had victory become despair? Weskier's third eye witnessed everything, and his expression twisted into one of ecstasy. "Ah, yes," he murmured, as the symphony of explosions and screams played like music in his ears. "This is it. This is what I wanted to see, what I wanted to hear. Ah ha ha ha." His laughter filled the sky, as he clashed with Fry and Snow from opposite sides. These were the moments Weskier lived for. The point when mortals reached the peak of their joy, convinced that they had triumphed, only for him to strike and turn that joy into tragedy. That was his greatest pleasure. The sadistic delight of Weskier, the fourth seat of the upper demons. While humans died in droves, the three continued to battle in the air, locked in a hopeless struggle. Even together, Fry and Snow found no advantage. When Frey's dark sister clashed against Weskier's bare hand, he realized the gulf between them was immeasurable. Weskier's power was monstrous. The sheer difference left Fry burning with frustration. "You were there from the beginning," Fry roared, slashing furiously, tearing through the sky with waves of black hole aura. "You stood beside me, watched me, through those cursed eyes of yours." The heavens shook under his assault, but Weskier met it with ease. "You could have killed me any time you wanted. So why? Why now? Of all times?" Frey's fury boiled over, his mind unable to comprehend the demon's intent. Weskier had been Aegon, meaning he had always been there. In the temple during the hunt throughout the war. Even before that, there were times Fry had fought Aegon directly, times the prince had genuinely tried to kill him, and moments when he'd feigned weakness, so convincing that Fry had believed he could end him with ease. But the reality was far different, and the question now burned in Frey's mind. Why? Why would a demon of Weskier's caliber go to such lengths to play this masquerade? Aegon. The ambitious prince who had deceived the world into believing he sought the throne for humanity's sake. Weskier, the vile trickster demon whose true motives no one could grasp. Who would ever believe the two were one and the same? The thought alone gave Fry a pounding headache, and Weskier only laughed harder, as though this revelation had been what he'd been waiting for all along. "Oh, my dear Fry, what nonsense are you babbling now?" He swatted Snow aside with a wave of crushing aura, then seized Fry by the throat with one hand. From Weskier's body, black tendrils erupted, wrapping around the dark sister, sealing it in a web of demonic energy. In the demon's grasp, Fry found himself powerless. "Who ever said I wanted to kill you, Fry?" Weskier's third eye gleamed ominously as he leaned closer. "The goal was never to kill you. You must not die, no matter what it costs." Still gripping him, Weskier began to crush Frey's body, fracturing bone after bone, but without delivering the killing blow. Fry didn't understand. He didn't know that the demons were keeping him alive for a reason, and that reason was burning within Weskier's mind. Long ago, Nameless had done the impossible. Through manipulation of souls, he had managed to seal the spirit of Agaroth himself. In that domain between life and death, Nameless stood above even the Demon King. But Agaroth's soul was too immense, too overwhelming. There was no vessel in existence that could contain it. That was why Nameless turned Helmont, the world of demons itself, into a vessel for Agaroth. From that day on, the Demon King could never leave Helmont again. Nameless hadn't sealed Agaroth's power. He had sealed his entire existence within that cursed planet. Yet the seal, strangely, began to weaken. The more Fry Starlight became like Nameless, and the more he drew upon the latter's forbidden powers. In other words, the key to breaking the seal was Fry Starlight himself. "You can't defeat me, Fry. Not even with your little light-bearer friend," Weskier said, his voice dripping with mockery, as a black mist spiraled outward from his hand, engulfing Snow Lionheart. The fog coiled around Snow like living smoke, devouring him from all sides. "The odds aren't in your favor, Fry. Your friends could die any second now. Why don't you try saving them?" Weskier laughed, his twisted grin widening as his aura surged through Frey's body like poison. Frey's veins bulged. His eyes and mouth bled under the crushing pressure. "I know this isn't all you've got," Weskier snarled, tightening his grip around Frey's skull. "I know there's more, deeper inside you." The air trembled. The void itself shook under the demon's power. "Come on, bring it out. Show me that power." Just like you did against Zebar. He was forcing him. Forcing Fry to enter that state again. The state where Nameless took control. That alone confirmed the truth. Weskier had been watching from the shadows the entire time. He had seen the battle against Zebar in full. The demon's true goal wasn't to kill Fry, but to push him. To make him unleash more and more of the buried power sleeping within. And that was exactly what he was doing now. Backing Fry and all of humanity into a hopeless corner. Trapped in Weskier's iron grip, Frey's eyes flared with violet light. The Dark Sister erupted, releasing an overwhelming surge of aura that shattered the demon's hold. Fry broke free. The moment he did, he gathered every ounce of power left in his body, and unleashed it all at once. 10,000 steps of shadow. Fry Starlight style. Nameless judgment. The sky exploded. Frey's nameless judgment fused with the black hole aura, and the twin force of his blades swallowed Weskier whole. The same catastrophic power that once split the moon apart. The blast tore through the heavens, turning the crimson sky to violet, obliterating every celestial sphere Weskier had conjured. The world shook as bolts of violet lightning raged across the sky, consuming everything in their wake. Then, from amidst the chaos, Fry fell toward the ground, gasping, trembling, trying to hold himself together. Weskier's residual aura still ate away at his flesh, refusing to fade. The injuries were brutal, his body scorched and bleeding, yet not a single wound regenerated. Even for him, that attack had been costly. It was the only way to break free of the demon's grasp. Raising his head toward the violet-stained sky, Fry steadied his breath, knowing all too well that the blast hadn't been enough to kill Weskier, and his fear was confirmed. When the demon's voice spread across the ruined heavens once again. "That's not what I wanted to see." The sound of Weskier's voice reverberated through the air, followed by a tremor that tore the sky apart. The aura clouds that had blanketed the heavens were ripped open, replaced by a new, sinister radiance. A scarlet aura, taking the form of an enormous red eye gazing down upon the world. Beneath it, Weskier hovered calmly, his body torn and half destroyed by Frey's devastating strike. But the giant eye turned, its gaze fixed upon him, and in moments, the demon's shredded form regenerated, the wounds closing as though they had never existed. Weskier returned to perfection. Smiling, flawless, reborn. "If you won't release more of Nameless power, then don't blame me for what happens next." He laughed, stretching out his hand toward the battlefield below, toward the Imperial soldiers still clashing with the remnants of the Ultras. An instant later, a blinding explosion erupted. Entire regiments were vaporized by a single flick of Weskier's finger. He was toying with them, using their lives as mere pawns, to torment Fry into breaking his limits. It was now undeniable. Even with snow beside him, Fry could not defeat the fourth seat. The gap between them was unfathomable. In that battlefield drowned in chaos and blood, there was nothing left but despair. Watching from afar, his wrinkled hand clutching a half-empty flask, Lord Murgo exhaled heavily. "So this is the bitter truth, Fry Starlight," he muttered. "There is no hope for humanity, not against monsters like that." He took another slow drink, his voice breaking with weary resignation. "You should have accepted my offer, boy, instead of letting this tragedy unfold." The old lord had known all along. He'd seen this coming. The demon's fangs had been waiting from the very start. "If there truly are gods in this world," Murgo whispered, gazing up at the crimson sky, "then may they have mercy on us. For the future is black, and filled with nothing but darkness." High above the battlefield, beneath the scarlet heavens, a crimson eye opened in the void. Vast, malevolent, and unblinking, it gazed upon the souls of all living beings beneath it, a presence both mesmerizing and terrifying. With a single glance from that eye, the wounds Fry had inflicted upon Weskier vanished instantly, as though he had never been harmed at all. At the same time, those who met the gaze of that eye began to die where they stood, their souls unraveling into nothingness. "That was a fine strike," Weskier said calmly, lifting his head toward the sky. "I assume it's the same one that defeated Zebar and shattered the moon itself." Indeed, Fry Starlight had reached an astonishing level, even without officially breaching the SSS rank. Such was the result of wielding a body carrying the potential of a warrior as great as Nameless himself. But before Weskier, even that power was not enough. Fry realized it the moment he saw the battlefield below. The Imperial forces were being annihilated. If this continued, the war would end in catastrophe. It was almost laughable how Weskier had reversed the entire tide of war, with nothing but his presence, turning victory into despair. Everything he'd done so far had been to corner Fry Starlight, but his true motives remained unknown. He was a being of overwhelming terror, one who broke his enemies mentally, long before destroying them physically. And against such a foe, what could Fry possibly do? Every time his eyes met Weskier's, and that monstrous crimson eye above him, he felt nothing but despair. A despair deeper than anything he'd felt, even during his battle against Zebar. Yet, just as Fry was about to collapse beneath that weight, something stirred. A blinding surge of power burst forth from above the crimson eye. A light pure and divine. Judgment of light. Snow Lionheart's voice thundered across the heavens. A beam of brilliance tore through the red sky, piercing the eye from within and shattering it apart. Light engulfed the darkness, and within seconds, Snow emerged, his body clad in the radiant armor of the anointed war state. He descended from the center of the explosion, majestic and awe-inspiring, his blade Vermithor gleaming like a star. Weskier reacted swiftly, forming a surge of dark aura around his hand, meeting Snow's descending strike head-on. The two forces collided, light and darkness locked in a cataclysmic struggle. Though the gap in their strength was vast, Snow held his ground, his body radiating waves of blinding energy. "This is the soul of light," Weskier muttered, recognizing it at once. "Get up, Fry. Now isn't the time to fall," Snow shouted, pushing forward even as Weskier's darkness pressed him back. "The enemy's right in front of us. We fight or we die." He swung again, unleashing a flurry of holy strikes, his aura of light clashing against the abyss. "The gap between us is enormous," Snow shouted, raising Vermithor toward the heavens. "But it's not hopeless." More divine power flowed into him. The soul of light is the natural counter to demons. It burns them from within. Indeed, the soul of light had once wounded Agaroth himself. In the ancient past, though Snow was no longer as powerful as he had been. When known as the Pure Vessel, he still believed he could injure Weskier. If Fry could create the opening, and that was the message he sent to his friend. "We fight. To the very last breath." Boom! The sky erupted with explosions as Snow dove again, his light colliding with Weskier's shadow, leaving trails of white and black tearing across the heavens. "If we win, so be it. If we lose, then let it be. We'll die fighting. We'll die trying." There was no other way. No escape from the fourth seat of the upper demons. Fry understood that now. While his friend fought valiantly, Weskier quickly began to overpower him. "You truly are a hero, Snow," Weskier said, parrying Vermithor with a grin. "To be honest, I always thought of you as just another human, stronger than most, perhaps, but hardly worthy of admiration compared to Fry." He smiled, a flicker of interest in his tone. "But you've surprised me in the end. I couldn't read your fate at all. I assumed it was because Fry Starlight stood near you, but no, that wasn't the reason." Weskier extended his hand, A strange power began to form around it. You're not human, are you? You're a light bearer. One who holds the stronger half of the soul of light. And that changes everything. He raised his hand higher. Hand of death. The moment the words left Weskir's lips, Snow felt something seize his chest. A cold, crushing hand gripping his heart. Before he could react, his heart burst within his chest, blood seeping instantly through the cracks of his golden helm. His light flickered, and his body began to fall. You carry a power akin to the First Lord of Light, Weskir said, smiling faintly. That makes you dangerous. Over his shoulder, a dark spear materialized, its tip pulsing with void energy. Unlike Fry Starlight, I have no reason to let a threat like you live. Snow. The spear launched with terrifying speed. A blur that tore the air apart. Snow's heart was already destroyed. That alone should have ended him. But Weskir wanted certainty. To obliterate the body entirely. The spear struck true. But at the last instant, Snow's form dissolved into shards of pure light, stunning even Weskir himself. The weapon passed harmlessly through, as the fragments of light swirled together, reforming once more into Snow Lionheart, standing tall in his shining armor, Vermithor blazing in his hand. In a burst of motion faster than sight, he unleashed a thunderous slash toward Weskir, who caught it just in time, shielding himself with a wall of dark aura. Light and darkness clashed again and again, their collision tearing through the air with cataclysmic force. In the end, the light failed to pierce through, but it generated enough pressure to make even Weskir pause, his crimson eyes flickering with genuine curiosity. Across from him, through the cracks of his golden helm, Snow Lionheart's eyes glowed with fierce resolve. Weskir, or perhaps I should call you Aegon. Suspended in the sky, radiant aura surging behind him, Snow gathered his power once more. You haven't changed at all. Even now, after revealing your monstrous power, you're still the same filthy, deceitful rat. You can crush my heart again if you wish. It won't matter, because what resides within me surpasses the very concept of blood. Something purer, far beyond it. Snow's body erupted with light, his will burning hotter than ever as he pressed beyond his limits. I am the pure vessel. The instant he spoke those words, he vanished, reappearing before Weskir at the speed of light, striking with lethal precision. His swordplay was divine. Flawless, fluid, and blindingly fast. The White Knight of humanity was no mere soldier. He had spent his entire life mastering this path, seeking to reclaim the self that history had forgotten. It was said that lightbearers and demons were eternally bound, each the antithesis of the other. One embodied radiance, the other shadow. And among the lightbearers, Snow Lionheart had been born the purest, the strongest of them all, the pure vessel. His power existed solely to destroy demons. Against them his limits shattered, unleashing the true might of the soul of light. Now he shone brighter than ever before, displaying a strength far greater than when he had once faced Geppetto's puppet and lost to that masked stranger. The power surge was tremendous, and his duel with Weskir became a spectacle of gods. Light against shadow, heaven against abyss. Clad in golden armor, Snow looked less like a man, and more like a celestial knight descended to deliver mankind's salvation. Yet the terrifying truth was undeniable. Even with this overwhelming power, even with every strike amplified by the soul of light, Snow failed to wound Weskir even once. The demon blocked everything, effortlessly. Such flashy power. Ha 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 ha. Weskir's laughter echoed through the heavens, as he unleashed hundreds of dark projectiles. Snow countered them all with his radiant shield, sparks of light and shadow raining around them. I've seen Nito wield the soul of light in battle before, Weskir said, launching another blast that cracked Snow's armor. but never with such brilliance as yours. I suppose the soul of light only reveals its true potential when wielded by a genuine light-bearer. That's why even the ninth seat, Nito, can't do it. Nor could the demon king, Agaroth himself. Indeed, long ago, Agaroth had subdued the soul of light, despite it being his natural poison. Yet he could never wield it as skillfully as he did the 5 other souls in his possession: the soul of blood, the soul of darkness, the soul of death, the demonic soul, the soul of reincarnation, the soul of light. These 6 ancient souls were said to be the oldest of all creation, the primal sources from which every power in existence had emerged. Agaroth had claimed them all, but mastered only 5. The single one beyond his reach was the soul of light, the greatest weapon against his kind. Magnificent! Weskier roared, his laughter shaking the skies. Magnificent and pitiful all at once. Such potential. Wasted. Darkness surged outward, swallowing the heavens. Pitiful that you're still too weak to draw out its full power. Otherwise, the outcome of this fight might have been different. Completely surrounded, Snow was caught in Weskier's descending darkness. The finishing blow meant to erase him utterly. The light of the pure vessel was smothered at last. The result was inevitable, but his desperate struggle wasn't in vain, because at that final moment, a violet arc erupted from below, splitting Weskier's darkness apart, and freeing Snow from its grasp. Out of the rift stepped Fry Starlight, his body ablaze with tremendous aura. "Sorry for keeping you waiting, Snow," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "And thank you for bringing me back to my senses." Holding the Dark Sister, now fused with Balerion, Fry took a deep breath and leveled his blade toward Weskier. "Let's end this together, my brother." As he spoke, Snow's glowing eyes widened behind his golden helm. Before him, Fry unleashed a technique he had never seen before. 10,000 steps of shadow, Fry Starlight style. Black Blade Waltz. This time, Fry didn't swing. He thrust. A direct, straightforward strike. And as he did, the void itself split open in a perfect, linear tear. A wound in space that shot straight into Weskier's body. A jet-black wave burst forth, inky and cosmic, and for the first time, it tore through the demon's defenses. He hit him," Snow whispered in disbelief. It was the second time Fry had ever injured Weskier. The first being during the Nameless Judgment, and now with this new, terrifying strike. Weskier himself froze for a moment, staring at the wound with mild astonishment, before understanding dawned. "This aura, I see." His gaze fell upon Frey's blade, and realization struck. The Dark Sister now pulsed, with that same celestial black radiance. Black hole aura, output, 100%. Fry inhaled slowly, his violet eyes burning with determination. He had abandoned the use of ordinary aura. What now enveloped him was something far greater. A complete and perfect embodiment of the black hole aura. The black hole aura placed an immense strain on Frey's body, and the amount he could safely use was painfully limited. Usually, he blended it with his regular aura to reduce the exhaustion, a delicate balance that kept him from collapsing entirely. At best, he never used more than 30% of the black hole aura in battle. But now, Fry ignored all restraint. He unleashed it completely, even if it meant burning himself out entirely. "Let's do this, Snow," he shouted, his voice trembling with fierce resolve. Snow rose beside him instantly, his radiant form blazing against Frey's shadowed one. "Let's end it." One burned with a majestic, dark glow, and the other shone brilliant and pure. A living embodiment of light and darkness side by side. The soul of light and the black hole aura of Nameless. Weskier's grin widened as he spoke, his tone dripping with delight. Before him, 2 of the most destructive forces in existence had been unleashed upon the world. And yet, instead of fear, Weskier laughed, spreading his arms wide. "Come to me." Boom! As if awaiting that command, Fry and Snow lunged forward at the speed of light, their blades cutting through the heavens toward the demon. Weskier met them head-on, forming massive black suns of aura around his long arms, and swinging them like celestial hammers. The collision was apocalyptic. The shockwaves tore through the skies, reverberating across the entire battlefield below. It was a battle of the SSS rank. A clash of beings who had long surpassed the realm of mortals. Fry and Snow stood as humanity's finest, the greatest weapons the Empire had ever produced. If they fell, then so too would humanity's final hope. Down below, soldiers and elite students alike could only glance skyward, amid the chaos of their own war, hoping, praying, that their comrades above could do what no one else could. Defeat the monster whose laughter shook the world. Boom! 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 Explosions thundered again and again as light and darkness clashed. Fry and Snow swung their blades wildly, relentlessly, filling the scarlet heavens with streaks of white and black, until even the sky itself changed color again and again that day. 3 luminous trails intertwined. 2 swords locked against a pair of demonic hands, sheathed in abyssal energy. The battle was too fast to follow, too intense to think, too desperate for hesitation. In such a whirlwind of violence, there was no strategy left. Only pure instinct and determination. For reasons beyond comprehension, Weskier chose to engage them directly, abandoning his manipulation of the waves. A mistake that cost him his usual advantage. Fry and Snow didn't understand why, nor did they have time to wonder. All they could do was fight and keep fighting, to the very last breath. And for the first time, Weskier showed something other than mockery. A hint of genuine admiration. The way they moved in perfect harmony, covering each other's openings, anticipating each other's intent. It was flawless. It's like fighting a single warrior, not 2. Weskier muttered, eyes gleaming. Fry and Snow shared a bond that defied logic. A strange, powerful link that let them act as one. Through that connection, their combined power far exceeded what either could do alone. For the first time in this war, light and darkness fought side by side, and together they pushed the 4th seat of the upper demon's back. The sky became a tapestry of intersecting beams, thousands of glowing lines colliding and weaving together, in a sight both terrible and magnificent. And ironically, such a sight had occurred once before, on the day Weskier faced both the engineer German and the miracle Abraham Starlight. Now that history repeated itself, but this time before Fry Starlight and Snow Lionheart. As the battle reached its boiling point, Weskier threw his head back and laughed madly, utterly intoxicated by the chaos, by their defiance, by their refusal to yield. Magnificent struggle. What a glorious resistance. Boom. You're fighting fate itself, trying to change destiny. Boom. Ah, yes, that feeling I've missed for so long, watching great warriors fight, pushing beyond their limits, only to twist their hope and rage into despair. I've already seen it, the future itself. Today you'll learn the true meaning of fear and the taste of despair. O heroes of mankind! Weskier's laughter shook the heavens, as the clash between gods and devils entered its decisive turning point. One that would forever change the fate of humanity. The battle in Caelid continued, and the war shifted from a certain imperial victory to a complete siege threatening to wipe them all out. The Ultras managed to overturn the situation by launching a sudden and overwhelming assault led by Beatrice the Witch and the Hollow, Simon Manus, who had remained hidden for most of the war. The surprise strike was devastating. A massive number of Imperial soldiers inside Caelid were slaughtered. On the other side, the sudden appearance of Weskier from behind made retreat impossible. The 4th highest demon was absurdly powerful. powerful enough to annihilate their entire army alone, without the Ultra's help at all. The only reason the battle had lasted this long was because Fry Starlight and Snow Lionheart were holding him back. The two of them were fighting with everything they had, pushing far beyond their limits, aware that the moment either of them fell, the war would be over. At some point in the fight, the battle became a rapid clash where there was no room to think, only to act. Fry was using Black Hole Aura, but he was gradually reaching his limit. Despite the vast reservoir of aura he possessed, the Black Hole Aura could not be used endlessly. Yet it was the only weapon capable of wounding Weskier, of inflicting real damage. Black Hole Aura by itself was a world-breaking ability, one so powerful it rivaled the Soul of Light possessed by Snow. This alone proved how terrifying Shadow Adaptation truly was. The embodiment of 7 world-breaking powers fused into one. Because of that, and because Snow was the natural counter to demons through the Soul of Light, the two of them were able to endure by coordinating with perfect precision, combining their strengths. While the two of them cornered Weskier, both felt the same thing at the same time. They were reaching their limits. Fry was barely managing to maintain the same overwhelming tempo of combat as his aura drained. Snow, meanwhile, had brought out more of the Soul of Light than his body was ready to handle. Both of them were on the verge of collapsing. Yet neither allowed themselves to fall. Not yet. If I fall, Snow will not survive on his own. If I fall, Fry will be overwhelmed. At that critical moment in the battle, these were their thoughts. Somehow, both ignored their own breaking bodies, and focused on each other instead. Fry worried for Snow. Snow worried for Fry. And in that exact moment, something remarkable happened. The way they fought changed. They no longer acted as two fighters. They acted as one. Snow covered Frey's weaknesses completely. And Fry did the same for Snow. Normally, in a 2-on-1, coordination improves the more the fighters understand one another. But the level of understanding between Fry and Snow was absurd. As if one man, Weskier said it himself, recognizing the truth before them. This synchronized unity allowed the two to draw out power far beyond their individual ceilings. Even Weskier found himself acknowledging the scale of what they were doing. Weskier's arms were coated in a black substance formed from his aura, making his limbs harder than any metal in this world. Drenching himself in that devouring power, he chose close-quarters combat, abandoning his wave manipulation for some reason. Yet even as he parried their blades, both of you are outputting SSS rank power despite not having broken into that rank yet, and both of you wield world-breaking abilities. One being the natural bane of demons, the other being the greatest weapon Nameless ever possessed. And fighting together like this, the result is truly extraordinary. Weskier laughed. If your opponent were Zebar instead of me, it's likely he would have lost. Truly astonishing. Encircled by them, Weskier's third eye opened. I have lived among you. I have seen everything with my own eyes, heroes of humanity. Boom! Snow's blade collided against Weskier's right arm, while Dark Sister fell upon his left. From both sides, the two had him locked in completely. What you're doing is impressive, but this alone will never defeat me. The space around them shuddered. Fry and Snow both felt the shift instantly. Gravity? Weskier manipulated gravity. At a level so overwhelming the air itself became heavy. Under that crushing weight, Fry and Snow were driven downward, slamming into the ground with violent force. The gravitational pressure buried them deep into the earth. The entire battlefield froze under the suffocating force. The only one left standing in the sky was Weskier, alone. Declaring himself the absolute superior life form, he stretched out both arms, revealing dozens of bleeding wounds left by Fry and Snow's blades. And with a blink, the wounds healed. Meanwhile, beneath the crushing pressure, Fry and Snow struggled to even breathe. See now? Didn't I tell you? Weskier's voice echoed across the entire battlefield. This is all it takes for me to bury you both. The moment I choose to use wave manipulation, You collapse. He smiled, unchanged from the very start of the battle. So what now? Tell me, Fry. Tell me, Snow. The air trembled. Should I abandon wave manipulation again and fight you like a savage brute, just to give you a chance? Or should I simply end this here and now? Weskier, highest fourth seat demon. His true mastery. Wave manipulation. Weskier is counted among the top 5 wave manipulators in existence. And there are only 4 others who can rival him in that field. Unleashing his true power meant nothing less than the beginning of catastrophe for humanity. In those desperate moments under crushing pressure, Weskier started to laugh, scornful. Do you really think that by fighting here you will spare the lives of those weak humans of the Empire? Is that what you believe? Weskier shouted, his terrifying voice sweeping through the ears of every man present. Who do you think I am? Who do you think you are fighting right now? He roared, pointing at the Imperial lines. Let me enlighten your ignorance, soldiers and so-called heroes of the Empire. Learn this well. The fate of your loved ones is no different from your own. While you struggle here to survive, the Empire is being consumed by fire. Weskier's words shook the field. From the moment he appeared, the end had begun. Not only for the soldiers before him, but for the Empire as a whole. Geppetto is advancing now with his army, and many high demons are inside Imperial soil. They are exterminating its people and spilling their blood one by one. Your families, your loved ones, your friends, they are being wiped out right now, one by one. Weskier screamed madly. Do you hear that, Fry? Your family, among them. Your sister's soul is hanging there. Those words landed like thunder, the final blow that crashed over Fry. He immediately opened his system HUD in disbelief and scrambled to check Ada's status. Her name flashed among his close contacts. In a terrible, deadly crimson. That color appears only when something has befallen the person. The same crimson had shown during the chase when Danzo and Sansa teetered on the edge of death. That red alone was enough for Fry to know Weskier was not lying. Starlight's thoughts followed the same horrific cascade. Beyond the demonic sea, the Empire's lands were burning. All Imperial forces were here on Ultra's territory. There was no one left to defend those people on the other front. In other words, what was happening there was simple extermination without resistance. Realizing that, Fry felt his head burn as if something inside him was about to explode. He bit his lip so hard blood spilled to the ground. His eyes bled red, veins crawling across their whites. Frey's body trembled, and unconsciously he released a far greater amount of black hole aura, breaking free from Weskier's gravity. Weskier smiled with delight at the sight. He had been pushing Fry to the edge. Fry knew that. He couldn't help but erupt after what he'd heard and seen. I don't know what you're trying to achieve with all of this, Weskier, but be sure. You'll gain nothing good from toying with me any further. Either I kill you here and now, or I die trying. Fry roared, shattering the ground beneath him and lunging at Weskier. Fry! Don't fall for his provocation. That's what he wants. Snow shouted, trying to stop him, but to no avail. Fry slammed into Weskier without preamble, unleashing a torrent of lethal strikes that tore the sky itself. Watching, Snow realized Fry could not defeat Weskier even under such horrific strain. The attacks were violent and thunderous, one after another. Snow was stunned for a moment. But the defining mark was that Weskier blocked every strike Fry hurled without trouble. Falling to the ground, Snow glanced at himself. He was still in his strongest form. The anointed war state. But his condition was pitiful. His golden shield in his left hand had shattered and cracked terribly. His golden helm was broken, leaving half his face exposed. The gilded sigils across his carved body remained, but he could not hold on much longer under the pressure imposed by the soul of light. Seeing his friend fight like that, Snow drew in a deep breath and let the soul of light explode from within him. Then so be it. Until death, my friend, Snow said, then released a roaring wave of light and smashed his foot into the ground, carving the earth itself. He flashed up inside a beam of light and joined Fry. And within moments their eyes met. In a single look they understood each other without a word. Snow was ready to throw his life in with Frey's if needed. And that steadied Fry slightly, taming the madness and fury Weskier had provoked. This time, the two offered their last cards and entered a final, decisive fight against the fourth seat. Thanks to Snow, Fry did not lose himself entirely and fall into Weskier's traps. Together they coordinated once more, resolved to end this battle. They had reached their limits. There was little time left. So, mid-fight they closed their eyes. They found themselves standing face to face inside a void stained black and white. A place that symbolized both of them. "Hey, you look pitiful, old friend," Fry said, while Snow laughed and raised his white mantle of light, revealing his shattered armor. "Don't blame me. The opponent is the fourth seat, as you know. A true monster. And despite everything we've given, he is not fighting at full power against us. Yes, I can say with certainty he's holding back," Fry replied, affirming Snow's thought. Inside that black and white void the two were acutely aware of each other's condition. Both had reached their end. Their bodies could not endure much longer the enormous power they had poured into this fight. It would have been different if both had attained SSS rank. But their fatal flaw was lacking that rank. "This is truly ironic," Snow said. "I stand as what remains of a pure vessel, while you are the vessel that holds the powers of a great warrior who once struck fear into demons' hearts." It seems Snow did not know much about Nameless, since the latter only appeared after the defeat that Pure Vessel suffered against Agaroth. But even so, he could still understand Frey's current state well enough. Snow Leonhart had undergone a tremendous change, an astonishing maturity ever since he opened his path and awakened to his true identity. He was no longer the naive hero he once was. He had become a true warrior, a great warrior. Someone who could always be relied upon in battle. I bet that, if we still possessed our old power, mine as Pure Vessel, and yours as Nameless, defeating a demon like Weskier wouldn't have been an obstacle at all. "I won't argue with that," Fry replied shortly, turning his gaze toward the horizon of that void. "We can't keep fighting for much longer, so we need to risk everything on one final strike." Snow nodded. "A joint attack. Far stronger than anything we've used so far. Weskier still isn't taking us seriously. We must use that. Yes, this is our only chance." Fry closed his eyes, and Snow did the same. The black hole aura, the light soul aura. Both were weapons of mass destruction, one born of darkness, the other of pure light. Light was the direct counter to demons, the strongest weapon against them. However, in terms of raw destructive power, black hole aura could exceed even the soul of light. But when it came to demons specifically, the soul of light could inflict the deeper wound. So instead of attacking separately, Snow proposed something insane. A fused strike, combining the black hole aura and the soul of light. At first glance, it was impossible. But both of them, because of the affinity system, were so deeply connected that each could feel and understand the other's thoughts instantly. Snow had seen something like this before. In the memories of his past self, the moment when Pure Vessel had fought the Demon King, Agaroth. At that time, the Demon King had done something beyond reason. He combined two world-breaking powers into a single fused attack. That had been the decisive factor in Pure Vessel's defeat. Snow now wanted them to try the same. A joint technique between the black hole and the light. For a moment it felt absurd. But both of them knew. Instinctively, they could do it. Their synchronization in the battle against Weskier had reached a level beyond understanding. Weskier sensed something shifting in the void around them. He realized something was coming, but it was already too late. From Frey's blade, a pitch-black abyss unfurled, like a rift carved from another world. This was the full release of the black hole aura at maximum output. From Snow's sword, a radiant light burst forth, illuminating the world itself. The full force of the soul of light. Style of Fry starlight. Style of Snow Leon Hart. They spoke in unison, swinging their swords with all they had left. A single final strike, greater than anything they had ever released. From their blades, darkness and light rose together, reshaping the world, and crashing down upon the demon entirely. For the first time, Westgear's expression changed. His smile vanished. His face twisted in genuine shock at the overwhelming power unleashed at the final moment. Nameless judgment. Judgment of light. They released their mightiest techniques, 2 arcs of absolute destruction capable of erasing the sky. But the attack did something unexpected. It did not strike Westgear directly. Instead, the light and blackness intertwined. Nameless judgment and judgment of light fused into one. A new aura emerged. Neither dark nor bright, but something gray, something impossible. A power that made the world fall silent. Weapons dropped from hands. Eyes turned skyward in awe. Even the strongest could not comprehend what they were witnessing. Even Beatrice's expression twisted in horror as she felt the scale of the attack. If Lord Westgear takes that head-on, she knew, even the 4th seat would not survive a catastrophe like that. But it was too late. The judgment consumed him entirely. Within that vast gray annihilation, Westgear vanished. His darkness dissolved. And only his 3rd eye remained glowing faintly crimson, realizing his enemies had gained the power to defy fate. At that moment, for the first time in thousands of years, Westgear was driven to the edge by opponents far weaker than him. A final joint strike, one that combined the full power of Fry and Snow. The two had succeeded in merging 2 world-breaking abilities together. Something Agaroth himself had once done in the distant past, when he fought Pure Vessel. The Soul of Light and the Black Hole Aura were among the most devastating forces in existence. And combining them was naturally catastrophic. Dark Aura collided with its radiant counterpart, and from that collision, an entirely new form of power was born. A grim gray aura, one so overwhelming that the world fell silent for long seconds, grasping the sheer magnitude of its destructive force. Just feeling that aura from afar was terrifying. But Westgear faced it head-on, receiving it in full. For those few roaring moments, Westgear's expression reflected pure shock. Astonishment at the heights his opponents had reached. From the very beginning, he had never fought seriously. He had never used even a fraction of his real power. Even then, Fry and Snow had posed no threat to him. Not even when he allowed them the advantage. But this strike, combining 2 world-breaking forces, was enough to kill him. That much Westgear was certain of. Even if he unleashed his full power, even if he shielded himself with every last drop of his aura, he would not be able to defend against it. And he knew that. Shock faded to wonder. Wonder faded to curiosity. Curiosity shifted into a faint smile. I haven't experienced something like this since my battle against the Ghoul Sovereign. To think my life would be threatened by beings who haven't even stepped into SSS rank yet. How absurd. Truly absurd. Westgear closed his eyes, leaving only his 3rd eye open, staring directly into the oncoming destruction. The King's Eye sees fate and the future. But it could not see the fate of beings like Fry Starlight and Snow Leon Hart, whose destinies were too powerful and too deeply veiled. Even Agaroth himself would struggle to fully decipher them. Thus, the King's Eye was useless against them. Westgear could not predict their final strike. Yet, despite the hopelessness of the situation, Westgear did not appear afraid. Even though he could not block it, even though he could not escape it, he remained perfectly calm as the gray aura engulfed him and obliterated his body entirely. Westgear's form disintegrated at a frightening pace, turning to nothing until only that ominous crimson 3rd eye remained glowing in the void. The King's Eye was all that survived. The 4th seat of the High Demons had been annihilated. In a scene so unreal no one would believe it unless they saw it. In those brief moments, Westgear was dead, without question. But death is not always the end. The moment his body completely dissolved, something strange occurred. The king's eye glowed with a deeper, darker red than ever before. And then, as if by sorcery, time stopped. The world itself froze. The void and everything within it stood still. Everything. Except the glowing red eye. Then, from the empty air beneath the eye, a mouth formed. Weskir's mouth. And it stretched into that familiar terrifying smile. Then spoke. The king's eye is a world-breaking ability, belonging to the great King Agaroth. It is one of his strongest powers. The eye flared, burning away the fused gray aura bit by bit. This ability allows its bearer to perceive the fates of all beings around them. But did you really think that was all it could do? Weskir laughed, his voice echoing across the frozen void, as his body began reforming as though nothing had happened. Meanwhile, the fused strike, the final hope Fry and Snow had poured everything into, vanished as if it had never existed. The great King Agaroth has only 2 eyes, and each holds a terrifying power without equal. One of those eyes is the one within me, and its strongest ability is simple. Weskir's smile widened. To reject any phenomenon it witnesses. The king's eye continued consuming the joint attack, erasing it completely. Be proud. Your strike was strong enough that I was forced to use my strongest weapon to survive. However, unlike the king himself, I can only use the king's eye once per battle. Hi hi hi. As he spoke, blood streamed heavily down his forehead. The king's eye slowly dimmed, its glow fading until Weskir finally closed it. For the first time in a very, very long time. Thus, one of Agaroth's most horrifying abilities was unveiled. The eye that rejects fates that threaten its bearer. The king's eye had seen that Fry and Snow's attack would kill Weskir, so it simply refused its existence. Meaning, the final attack Fry and Snow gambled everything on was erased, as if it had never happened. And there, in the twisted void, Weskir stood unharmed, blood coating his face, making him appear even more terrifying than before. A scene that revealed the true horror of the upper seats. Time resumed. Above Caelid, the explosion echoed. Below, no one knew the outcome yet. All they knew was that Fry and Snow had unleashed a strike unlike anything the world had ever seen. And now, everyone waited. Every soldier, every elite student. Sansa, Uriel, Ghost, all of them stared into the sky, trembling with fear and hope. Had they won? Had they really defeated such a demon? If Fry and Snow had failed, what would happen to them? The fear of even thinking about it was overwhelming. Every human present prayed with all they had that the attack had been enough. Little by little, the veil of aura that covered the sky began to fade. And finally, the truth was revealed. A truth they would never forget. The sky had returned to its crimson shade, the color of despair. And at the center of that sky, they saw a scene that made eyes widen and terror spread across every face. No! Sansa was the first to whisper. And that whisper was the signal that unleashed a flood of screams and denial across the battlefield. Because what they saw was despair and nothing else. Up there in the sky, Weskir hovered unharmed, the same bloody smile drawn across his face. And with those long, filthy hands of his, he held 2 figures that everyone below recognized. In his right hand, Fry. In his left, Snow. Both of their bodies hung limp, powerless, unable to even hold their swords. They had been completely broken. After being struck by an ambush they hadn't anticipated in the slightest. The 2 had believed their final attack would at least inflict devastating damage on Weskir, but they were stunned when it vanished as though it had never existed. And Weskir retaliated immediately. Fry and Snow had not foreseen this possibility, not even for 1% of a second. So they could do nothing but witness themselves being destroyed by the 4th highest seat of the demons. And so, while he held them aloft by their necks, he displayed their shattered forms to the world. Weskir laughed, declaring himself the victor. exactly as expected. And with that, despair spread. Screams erupted everywhere. Sansa and Uriel tried to move, to do something. But they were completely surrounded by the Ultras, who launched a full assault the moment Weskir's victory was confirmed. They couldn't even break through the Ultras. How could they possibly imagine fighting the monster floating in the sky? In his hands, Fry and Snow were dying. Snow had already lost consciousness. Weskir had destroyed all of his internal organs to kill him. And only the Soul of Light was barely keeping him alive. Amazing! So this is the power that once allowed Pure Vessel to survive the king. The Soul of Light was truly extraordinary. Even when Agarath split Pure Vessel in half, the Soul of Light saved him. And now it was doing the same for Snow. Yet, under Weskir's continued suppression, neither Snow nor the Soul of Light could survive much longer. On the other hand, Fry was conscious and tried to move, but it was useless. Weskir had destroyed his body completely using a type of power Fry had never encountered before, preventing him from regenerating properly. He was fully exhausted. He could do nothing but watch the disaster unraveling before him. Don't look at me like that, Fry. Why do you seem surprised? This outcome was inevitable from the beginning. I already told you, you cannot defeat me. Though I should commend you too for forcing me to use the inevitability of the King's Eye. Weskir turned his gaze downwards, toward the burning empire. He did not look satisfied. Because his plan had not gone perfectly. His true objective had been to force Fry Starlight into Nameless mode again. That was why he held back during their fight. He wanted Nameless, not Fry. Nameless was overwhelmingly powerful. And even with only Frey's abilities, he would still be a terrifying opponent. But without many of the things he once possessed, Weskir was confident he could suppress Nameless if he took Frey's body. Just as he did against Zebar. That would weaken the seal on Agarath far more, allowing Weskir to proceed with his hidden plan. But everything collapsed once he was forced to use the King's Eye. Without the inevitability of the Eye, Weskir was no longer confident in facing Nameless. And so, he was forced to end this battle now. No matter, there will be many opportunities later. He muttered, already shifting to his next strategy. To break Fry completely, Weskir planned to take him hostage for now, and then kill those close to him one by one, applying pressure over time. He would start with Snow Leonhart, whom he never intended to leave alive. Snow had shown tremendous development and maturity since opening his path. If allowed to continue, he would undoubtedly become the next Pure Vessel. Thus, Weskir intended to end him here, even if the Soul of Light protested. At any moment now, the Soul of Light will fade, and your life will fade with it, Snow. He whispered beside Snow's ear. You don't have much time left. Your hour is coming soon. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. Weskir began counting Snow's final seconds. Frey's eyes were on the verge of bursting. In those desperate moments, he tried to move. Hundreds, no, thousands of times. But his body refused him. Truly looked as though he had lost everything. On the other side of the sea where his sister was, Geppetto was currently invading with his demon forces. Here where his friends and companions were, the Ultras and Weskir were slaughtering them. For the first time, everything important to Fry was on the verge of disappearing at once. It shattered him. He tried to fight again and again. And again. But Weskir would not allow him. It was hopeless. So hopeless that Fry begged for Nameless to take over his body once more. Please, take my body, take everything, just don't let them die. He whispered inside his mind, reaching out to the mask in the abyss, pleading for it. In a situation this desperate, Nameless was the only way to survive. But no matter how he called, no matter how he clawed through the darkness searching for him, there was no answer. Nothing. As if Nameless had never existed. Fry couldn't understand. Why had Nameless appeared against Zebar, but refused to come now? What was happening to him? To his body? He didn't know. But what he did know more than anything else is that the end was close, and everything would be destroyed if he didn't find some way to move. A desperate, miserable situation. In every sense. Fry Starlight hung in the sky, powerless while his comrades fought to their final breath below. Sansa unleashed all her shadows. Uriel summoned a majestic golden angel, draining her sacred power entirely. But the battle against Beatrice and those who accompanied her had consumed them completely. There was nothing they could do to help Fry. And that tore at them more than anything. Please, don't die. That was the only prayer they could muster. And yet, even they could not find a solution. None of them could do anything. Except one. A figure crawled through the shadows, emerging far from everyone, ascending a high ridge that gave him a direct view of Westgear. It was none other than Ghost Umbra, the lost shadow who had always searched for his light. I won't let you die, Fry. Nor you, Snow. Ghost spoke, having slipped past all the ultras to reach that vantage point. Gathering every ounce of strength he had left, he fixed Westgear within his reach, preparing to strike. There's no way for us to defeat a demon like him, but if I can just drag him into my domain for even a moment, they'll have a chance to escape. Cutting the world. Unfolding the domains. Those were the abilities Ghost learned in the 10th Court of Shadows. Because of them, he could drag others into his shadows and fight them within his own realm. A world where he held absolute advantage. Secretly, he had been refining this skill for a long time, preparing for a moment just like this. And so, without warning, Ghost unleashed his power, spreading his shadows outward to drag Westgear into his domain and save both Fry and Snow. Ghost's aura surged skyward, vast and overwhelming, targeted Westgear directly. And it reached him, but in the final moment. Ghost's aura shattered the instant it touched the demon. Westgear turned his head. Mildly puzzled. It seems an annoying little insect is buzzing beside my ear. The demon turned to face Ghost. And Ghost, despite gathering every thread of shadow he had, understood in that instant the cruel truth. His technique was strong. But there was no universe in which he could drag a monster like Westgear into his domain. Westgear was one of the greatest wave controllers to ever exist. His mistake was fatal. Ghost now found himself face to face with that monstrous entity. What now? Ghost cursed under his breath. The technique he perfected his entire life had failed. So what was left? He had failed. And to make matters worse, Westgear had fully noticed him. The demon extended his hand, and a mass of pitch-black aura shot toward Ghost at terrifying speed. If that attack hit, Ghost would certainly die. He knew it, staring at the incoming death. Ghost stood frozen. Then, just as the attack was about to strike him, it evaporated. Ha! Ghost gasped, stunned by his own survival. In that moment, a cold, strange hand rested atop his head. It is still far too early for you to fight on this level. Behind him came a voice. Deep, cold, yet familiar. Ghost spun around in disbelief. To see those long arms stretched above him. The figure was towering, wearing a dark gray suit and a long black hat. His arms were impossibly long. His form hardly human, but Ghost recognized him instantly. The long-armed one, the very man he had met once inside the 10th Court, was now standing before him. The long-armed figure stood there, his gaze fixed entirely on Westgear. And clearly, the demon had noticed him as well. There is no time to waste. Let me show you now, Ghost Umbra, what true domain manipulation looks like. The long-armed one raised his hand at an unnatural angle, and dozens of spectral arms unfurled from his own. A cold, blue aura flooding outward in overwhelming force. The moment he released it, his aura enveloped a massive area. Wrapping around Westgear, the demon could do nothing but stare as the domain closed around him. Fry and Snow slipped from his grasp, falling free. Inside that domain, Only Weskier and the long-armed one remained. The fourth highest seat immediately became serious, releasing his full aura. "So, you were here all along, you rotten corpse," Weskier spoke, eyes narrowing. The long-armed figure stepped forward. "It has been some time since our last battle. It seems you have forgotten my name, so allow me to remind you." He adjusted his hat. "My name is Adur, number 4 of the sect of my lord, Nameless, right hand of Gehrman. Do not think for even a moment that this land will submit to you, Weskier. We have not fallen yet." Summoning a terrifying surge of aura, enclosing Weskier fully within his domain. One of the greatest remnants of the Nameless sect prepared to fight. "Prepare yourself, Weskier. The real war begins now." As Adur spoke, the world itself trembled, and the wheel of the past began to move once more. While Geppetto was invading the Empire alongside numerous high demons, something unexpected occurred. From within the Starlight Estate, a pillar of light erupted, and a strange man appeared, obliterating demons at impossible speed and saving humans in his path. From Winterfell at the Moonlight Estate, the gates of the secret library opened, sheltering humans inside, while a mysterious girl stood outside alone, repelling every demon that dared approach. From Nucleus, the Sunlight Estate, the heat surged to unimaginable levels as a burning figure appeared, incinerating Geppetto's demons and corpses alike to protect the survivors. Resistance ignited across countless places, where there was once slaughter. Humanity rose again, fueled by the remnants of ancient legends. The battle was not over. Earth still had much to offer before falling. Just as the heroes of the present fought to their final breaths, the heroes of the past would do the same. This was the first spark of the clash of legends. "Prepare yourself, Weskier. The real war begins now." As Adur spoke, the world itself trembled, and the wheel of the past began to move once more. While Geppetto was invading the Empire alongside numerous high demons, something unexpected occurred. From within the Starlight Estate, a pillar of light erupted, and a strange man appeared, obliterating demons at impossible speed and saving humans in his path. From Winterfell at the Moonlight Estate, the gates of the secret library opened, sheltering humans inside, while a mysterious girl stood outside alone, repelling every demon that dared approach. From Nucleus, the Sunlight Estate, the heat surged to unimaginable levels as a burning figure appeared, incinerating Geppetto's demons and corpses alike to protect the survivors. Resistance ignited across countless places, where there was once slaughter. Humanity rose again, fueled by the remnants of ancient legends. The battle was not over. Earth still had much to offer before falling. Just as the heroes of the present fought to their final breaths, the heroes of the past would do the same. This was the first spark of the clash of legends. In the final battle of Caelid, the war had reached a critical point. What began as a conflict between the Empire and the Ultras had now evolved into a desperate struggle between mankind and the demons. After Fry and Snow fell, it seemed as though all hope had vanished completely. Yet the arrival of Adur shifted the balance once more in a stunning turn. Number 4 of the Nameless sect versus number 4 among the High Demons. This clash that was about to unfold was not their first. It was clear now. The two already knew each other. Within the sealed dark domain, with only the two of them present, Adur had successfully isolated Weskier, giving those outside the time they desperately needed to breathe. But now he was forced to face the fourth throne head-on, after all these long years. Adur of the Nameless sect, huh? To be honest, I thought you were dead, Weskier said, as a devastating wave of dark aura rolled off his body. You hid well. All this time. The will of those who vanished into the abyss of history never truly disappeared, Whisker, Adur replied, his impossibly long arms unfolding behind him as a cold, deep blue aura surged outward. They return when the time demands it. And that time, Adur's voice echoed, has come. Ha! Big words, follower of Nameless. Whisker laughed. But don't fool yourself. I can see the truth clearly even without the king's eye. He raised his hand. And the sky of the dark domain ignited blood-red, as a countless number of crimson celestial spheres appeared overhead. You, remnants of Nameless, are nothing more than empty vessels, lost without your master. Your very existence depended on him. Without him, your souls decay slowly, one by one. He laughed again mockingly. Is that not why all his followers died out except the strongest few? And even those few are falling apart. I saw it clearly when I faced Gurman. If he were at his prime, I could never have defeated him. But now? He is nothing more than a specter of what he once was. Weskier pointed toward Adur. And you are no exception, number 4. Claim strength all you wish, but you will die here. As his words fell, the crimson spheres began to blaze in preparation to rain destruction upon a single man. But Adur did not stand idle. We'll see about that. The ground beneath him exploded as an enormous number of azure spheres emerged in response. Crimson above, azure below. A catastrophic clash was moments away. And then, the sky and earth collided. Storms of aura tore apart the void, colliding in violent detonations beyond mortal comprehension. Aura shells rained like meteors. The dark realm trembled under the overwhelming force unleashed. Both were supreme wave manipulators, specialists in the same domain, turning the fight into a dazzling spectacle of control and destruction. At first, they were perfectly even, each controlling nearly the same number of celestial spheres. Some strikes passed dangerously close. One nearly took Adur's head. Another grazed Whisker's shoulder as he hovered above. Their reservoirs of aura were enormous, allowing the duel to continue violently for a long time, but they both knew this was only the beginning. Weskier had not fought seriously against Fry and Snow. He was still nearly at full strength. The only real drawback was that he could no longer use the ultimate authority of the King's Eye in this battle. But even without it, Weskier was still a terrifying calamity. As for Adur, he was far from being in his best condition. That cursed demon is right. Even though I, unlike Gurman, stayed away from the battlefield for decades to preserve my vessel, the decay still reached me. The members of the Nameless sect had once all been dead, brought back to life by Nameless, housed in special vessels. But those vessels, supposedly perfect, began to deteriorate with time. Gurman was the greatest proof of this. Despite being the strongest vessel, his decay had begun long ago. Adur fared better. But even he now bore cracks across his skin. Back when Nameless still lived, his presence alone stabilized their vessels. But after his defeat against Agaroth, that stabilizing force vanished. Now they were merely shadows of their past selves. Even so, Adur continued to push his body beyond its limits. Fry and the Lightbearer did beyond what we ever expected. To force Weskier into using the King's Eye, at his current state, this is the best chance to end him. Killing the fourth throne would be a devastating blow to the demon hierarchy. But Adur already understood the truth. He could not kill Weskier. His best option was to contain him for as long as possible. Adur could retreat at any time if needed. Wave manipulators specialized in slipping away. But here, right now, retreat wasn't an option. He had to buy time, even if this meant losing the only chance that might ever come to bring Whisker down. This is the only thing I can offer you. The rest is up to you, heroes of mankind. With that resolve, Adur clashed directly against Whisker once more inside the sealed domain. Meanwhile, outside, the appearance of Adur had shaken the battlefield entirely. With Weskier forcibly sealed away, the Empire was allowed to breathe again. But victory was far from assured. Sir Alone and Emperor Mikar Valerian were gone. 2 SS plus pillars had fallen. And the Empire had lost its greatest weapons. Fry Starlight was completely exhausted. And Snow Leon Hart, his condition was far worse. His body had been destroyed by Whisker's strike. Only the soul of light was preventing his death. He was hanging on by a thread. Fry Starlight's POV. Huff! I drew a long, deep breath as I crawled over the blood-slick, filthy ground, tuning out the roar of battle around me. My eyes found only Snow lying nearby. We had been utterly defeated by a fourth-rank demon despite fighting with everything we had. It had been obvious from the start. Facing a foe of Whisker's caliber was premature for us. I didn't know everything that had happened earlier. Only that someone had managed to drive Whisker away for the moment, and Snow and I had fallen from the sky, slamming painfully into the earth below. So much was at stake. In moments like these, bitter and wretched, I felt helpless for the first time in a very long while. My friends could be wiped out any second. I had no idea what had happened to my sister across the other side of the world. I'd been toyed with by Weskier, puppet in his hands. I was so desperate I called out to that being living somewhere inside me, but even Nameless did not answer. Those horrific visions the system had shown me once were beginning to bleed into reality. In one battle it felt like I could lose everything. I would have been ready to die to prevent that. So much was riding on this, and my body refused to obey. Yet even in these bitter, broken moments I kept looking at Snow, who lay near me on the field. Weskier had tried to kill him properly. So much so that Snow himself had nearly vanished. Only the soul of light clung to him and kept him here, by sheer will. "Don't die, Snow," I whispered with great effort, squeezing my eyes shut as I tried to manipulate aura despite being utterly depleted. I still need power. Power above all else. If I wanted to save what I could save, I would not let Snow die. He was the brother I never had in this world. I would not let him go. You are the brother I never had, so you won't die. I won't let you. I spat bitter blood into my mouth and forced the words out. Then, after crawling the last few agonizing meters, I collapsed beside him and slammed my palm against his chest. Snow looked terrible. Face drained, lying on his back. His soul of light flickering, about to go out. "You won't die. You won't die." I said it with difficulty as explosions and destruction echoed around us. The Ultras were very close. None of that mattered now. Slowly I laid my hand over his heart and, using the third stage of shadow adaptation, poured the last of my aura into him. I didn't know exactly how much remained inside me. Only that it was precious and scarce. Burning those auras might end me. Aura was the life force keeping my body from collapsing. Still, trying was better than letting him die. "Snow, I'm sorry I haven't been honest with you about so many things. I'd hidden so much from him. So much that he might hate me if he heard the whole truth. And yet I should have told him before. About everything. Since I opened my eyes in this world as Fry Starlight, I fought alone. I believed I alone could change my fate. I thought my strength was everything. I had been willing to do anything to gain power. But you changed everything. You opened my eyes to what's right. You carried this burden with me. You walked this path by my side. Snow, I don't want to fight alone anymore." My eyes burned red from strain as I was completely hollowed out and powerless. The violet aura I tried to give him was the only thing I had left to offer. "I don't know how I succeed without you, Snow. So don't die. I beg you." I choked the words out and felt my chest tear as I transferred the last drops of my aura into him. Snow remained unconscious, sinking deeper into darkness despite the soul of light fighting to hold him. I reached for him, trying to find purchase. But only moments later the last of my own aura evaporated. So there, in that bloody battlefield between Empire and Ultras, we lay side by side and closed our eyes to the world. We had both failed miserably. Between one dying and the other surviving, perhaps dying together would have been easier. That cold, monstrous darkness felt oddly familiar. In the center of the battlefield, Fry and Snow lay motionless, like corpses emptied of life. The Earth's champions, Fry the Black Knight, Snow the White Knight. The two warriors who had stood against the monsters from above were down. Their death would mean the end. They could not be allowed to die at any cost. But no human could save them now. Their comrades were completely embroiled in fights for their own lives. As blood spilled and men fell one after another, Fry and Snow lay unseen. In those moments when death and blood reigned, everything turned gray. Death loomed nearer than ever. Until, strangely, a different color descended through the gray. A red butterfly came down from the sky, slow and calm, glowing faintly. No one saw it. No one knew whence it came. The butterfly navigated through the carnage toward a single person, ignoring everything else. Finally, it settled gently on Frey's chest, as if it had found its shelter at last. Magically, the butterfly scattered crimson-red dust that curled around Fry, then Snow, wrapping them in a web of deep, dark crimson aura that warmed their hearts strangely. In those decisive moments, an ancient female voice whispered, "I will not repeat my past mistake. This time, I will choose you both." Light curled around Fry and Snow, illuminating a new path for them. From the embrace of death, blood and ruin, a crimson butterfly wove its threads around Snow and Fry. In those few fleeting moments of the battle, amid the war, Fry felt a strange warmth flood his body, a gentle warmth that stirred a longing in his chest. The butterfly's crimson filaments crawled through his veins and coiled around his heart. They were comfortable, really warm. Although a foreign power had taken hold of his body, Fry welcomed that aura and let it move through him without conscious thought. Felt, somehow, as if it had always belonged to him. "I won't lose you this time," her voice whispered inside his soul, and Fry heard it clearly. He didn't recognize the voice at all, and yet it felt painfully familiar. The final clash with Weskier had been utterly despairing. For a moment Fry had truly thought he would lose everything. Neither his strength nor Snow's had sufficed. But life had not completely forsaken him in the abyss. There was still a glimmer of light, a last chance to survive and fight. In that warm instant, Frey's heart beat again, and a red light cut through the darkness inside his world. Alone there in the void, the butterfly scattered its magic until it reached Fry, hovering before him slowly and calmly. At that moment he felt the auras sweep his body and spare him from the worst. At first he thought he was hallucinating in the throes of death, but he wasn't that foolish. He soon realized this was reality. "Who are you?" Fry asked, reaching for the butterfly. "Why do you seem familiar? And why do I feel you so distant despite your closeness?" he added, trying to understand what was happening. The butterfly's form dissipated at once, turning into a spray that coalesced into a misty figure, a strange woman Fry had never seen. "There's no time, Fry. You must wake now," the woman said, her voice engraving itself into Frey's mind as she placed her hand over his chest. "Wake up. The battle isn't over." Her touch pushed Frey's body out of the void. An invisible force dragged him back to the world. Gasp! On the battlefield, Frey's back slammed into the ground. He leapt up and drew a ragged breath. He breathed painfully, heat and pressure filling his chest. His eyes flared red, and when he clenched his fists, strength surged back into him. My aura returned. Magically, the aura reservoir that Fry had completely drained by overusing the black hole aura had been replenished. When he tightened his fist, raw power burst forth. It was a miracle. Fry didn't linger on himself. He spun, remembering his friend lying nearby. "Snow!" He turned frantically. Snow had been on the brink of death, and Fry had failed to save him before. The thought of losing him had wounded Fry deeply. Snow had been like a brother. He couldn't bear to lose him. But the horrible vision Fry feared had not occurred. Instead, Snow sat beside him, pushing his upper body up and staring at Fry in bewilderment, unable to believe he was still alive. "Fry?" Snow managed, then stumbled. Fry caught him immediately, preventing him from falling. Holding him tightly, Fry felt Snow's strength and aura clearly. His friend had recovered. "Am I dreaming?" "Haha, I'm still alive, Fry," Snow said, astonished at his own survival. Weskier had devastated him. Snow had tasted death. Yet fate had decreed otherwise. and the White Knight of the land lived another day. Yes, you're alive. We're not finished yet. On the battlefield, Fry and Snow rose again. They were wounded and exhausted, but the strange aura that had appeared from nowhere had revived them. We can fight again, Fry said, releasing Balerion and the Dark Sister once more, while Snow drew the Vermithor. What's the situation? Where's Weskier? Snow asked, still unsure of what had happened. Fry wasn't much better informed. Only that someone had intervened and confined Weskier, and that for now their only enemies were the Ultras. Beatrice, Belith, Simon Manus, Murgo, and many others. Let's deal with the enemies in front of us first, Fry said, ready to return to the fray and annihilate them. Before they could move, a deafening explosion shook the area nearby. The void itself fractured like breaking glass. The field that Adur with the long arms had cast was destroyed. At that moment everyone saw the ferocious battle that had been raging inside the field. Thousands of thunderous explosions, clouds of clashing aura, and projectiles smashing into one another while two monsters fought up close, tearing each other apart. And then his voice echoed clearly for everyone to hear. Ha ha ha! Adur! You can't beat me! Weskier shouted as his body flared with dark aura, assaulting Adur who was matching him blow for blow. Adur, the long-armed man, looked strange and terrible. Dozens of hands sprouted from his elongated arms, letting him manipulate aura and wield multiple combat styles simultaneously with each hand. You will not leave this place victorious, Weskier. This land still has much to offer. Adur roared, conjuring a vortex of aura that swallowed every strike Weskier hurled. Weskier answered by summoning for colossal black giants, their heights dwarfing mountains. They swung their massive blades, shattering the vortex in a single sweep. But in the next instant, Adur raised hundreds of enormous aura blades that ripped through the void, tearing the giants apart in a storm of destruction. The battle was chaos incarnate. Unlike his fight against Snow and Fry, Weskier was now fighting seriously, unleashing his full strength. Originally, Fry and Snow were prepared to strike at the Ultras, but the shattering of Adur's domain made them hesitate. That damned demon is still here, and he still has plenty of power left, Fry muttered. Even without the King's Eye, Weskier was still overwhelmingly strong. But we might have a chance if we join forces with him. Adur. He had been able to restrain Weskier. Fry saw this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to strike and kill the wretched demon. He and Snow were far from being at their peak, but they could at least deal damage. Snow nodded instantly. He had been thinking the same thing. But before either of them could move to support Adur, they both heard that voice again. Do not fight him. You are not his match. Not yet. That voice. Snow's eyes widened at the familiar echo, while Fry fell silent. It was the same voice that spoke to him earlier in his mind. The voice of the one who had saved them from certain death. A warrior of the Shadow Sect cannot defeat Weskier. He can only restrain him, and only for a while. Adur was strong, but his vessel was damaged. He could not exert his full strength. Even if Fry and Snow aided him, victory was not guaranteed. In fact, it was unlikely. That was the warning she was trying to deliver. Weskier is not a fool. A rank 4 demon who has lived since ancient times will not be cornered easily. No one knew what cards Weskier still held. Just as he had concealed the King's Eye before, he could very well have more hidden weapons. The warrior of the Shadow Sect is buying you time. You must use that time to survive. And save what can still be saved. The voice from the Crimson Butterfly spoke. Foreign and yet close. Snow recognized her. She was the light-bearer from his memories. Fry felt a strange, unexplainable bond with her, so he took her words seriously, especially since she had saved them once already. Weskier was too occupied with Adur to notice they had risen again. This was their one window of escape. But how do we survive that monster? Fry said through clenched teeth. The Ultras still surrounded them, and Weskier could break Adur's restraint at any moment. From afar, their allies who had sensed their presence finally arrived. You're alive. Dawn Polaris and Selena rushed toward them, along with the rest of the elite class. Sansa and Uriel were further away, locked in harsh battles of their own. Sansa against Beatrice, Uriel against Simon Manus and his dolls, supported only by the holy avatar she had summoned. They were struggling. Ghost was missing entirely, still lost near the battlefield where Adur and Weskier clashed. "We're not winning this battle. Not in our current state," Fry said, fists trembling. Their goal was no longer to defeat Weskier, but to save what could still be saved. Ada weighed on Frey's mind more heavily than anything else, but right now, stabilizing this battlefield came first. "The answer is inside you, Fry." The voice spoke to him and Snow alone, pointed to the only possible path. To survive, to make use of the time Adur bought with his life. Realizing this, Fry exhaled slowly. He bent down, placing both hands on the ground. "So this was your plan all along, you damned engineer." He gathered his remaining power. "Snow, everyone, cover me with everything you have. What I'm about to do might be our only chance." Frey's eyes ignited, deep red intertwined with violet, as he summoned the power gifted by that woman. "I can feel it. With this strength, I can do it." Snow and the others didn't yet understand what Fry intended. But Snow Lionheart didn't need to, the moment Fry asked him to protect him. Snow exploded in blinding radiance, entering the state of war once more. The anointed war state, standing before Fry, shield raised like a knight guarding his king. His golden eyes shone beneath his helm, and the instant Snow released his power, Weskier sensed him. A deep, vicious scowl twisted his face. "Snow Lionheart, what is happening here?" He was stunned to see Snow standing once again. He had destroyed him, without a trace of life left. Yet the boy stood whole. It made no sense. Weskier hated the unknown. He tried to move, but Adur struck harder, forcing him back. "Your opponent is right here, Weskier. Where are you looking with those filthy eyes of yours?" "Tisage, you pest," Weskier countered, while Adur intensified his assault, fully aware that Fry was preparing to make his final move. "I will stand as long as I must, until my lord completes what must be done, and ends this hollow battle. No matter the cost, the Empire could not fall today." And Fry understood that more than anyone. So he placed the nameless mask back over his face, then slammed both hands onto the ground. They would not win this battle, so retreat was their only option. And to retreat, only nameless abilities could carve a path out of this despair. Gathering his strength, Fry released a terrifying surge of aura that pulsed across the battlefield. Everyone felt it instantly. "This is Fry!" Sansa turned toward him, and the others followed her gaze as glowing lines of aura formed an impossibly complex pattern across the field. "What in the hell is that supposed to be?" Murgo's expression twisted, astonished by the sheer intricacy of the formation appearing before his eyes. "This is spatial manipulation." Murgo, being an expert in the field, recognized it immediately. But the manipulation he was witnessing now was beyond anything he had ever encountered. A power that belonged to a completely different realm of existence. Nameless dominion over space itself, Fry muttered, enduring the intense pressure crushing his mind and body. What he was attempting was to save everyone in the battlefield by transporting all of them at once. And the only safe haven left in the world was on the other side. At the same moment Fry began activating the technique, the same power flared far away. Within the Shadow Sect, thanks to what the engineer had done long ago, the Shadow Sect had become a fortress the size of the capital Belgrade. A fortress capable of sheltering the Empire's surviving forces. By using nameless spatial dominion, Fry was about to teleport thousands at once and save them all. Weskier saw it happening instantly and attempted to intervene. But Adur blocked him to the last breath. "Attack him! Don't let him complete it!" Weskier's command rang like thunder, and every Ultra on the battlefield turned to Fry. Dozens surged forward, but every single one of them was cut down. The vermithor cleaved all who approached. Snow stood unbreakable. No one could pass him. His strength alone carved a wall before Fry, allowing him to focus without distraction. Meanwhile, one by one, people around Fry began to vanish, teleported away to safety. We will not fall today. We will live to fight another day. As long as they lived, the war was not over. Weskier would not win. Right now, survival was everything. And so, while the battlefield was engulfed in chaos and flame, as Weskier and Adur's clash reached its peak, Fry pushed Nameless abilities to their absolute limit to save everyone. The war between the Empire and the Ultras had ended. Now, the next chapter of the War of Darkness would begin. The cruelest, bloodiest, most decisive chapter of all. The Clash of Legends. Between Fry and the Shadow Sect against Weskier and the Demonkind. Between the heroes of the present and the awakened champions of the past rising once more to face Geppetto and the strange monster who followed him. This was the end of one era, and the beginning of another. Across the vast battlefield, the overwhelming formation of aura covered everything. For miles, countless souls trembled under the echo of that magnificent violet aura. Nameless manipulation of space allows him to teleport anywhere in this world, so long as nothing interferes. If Nameless himself were here, he could have evacuated the entire Imperial army in an instant. But Fry was far from Nameless. He was barely maintaining the formation. The teleportation was slow, painfully slow, forcing everyone to defend him with their lives until he finished saving as many as possible. Imperial warriors disappeared one after another, their forms swallowed by the violet light as Fry shifted them directly into the Shadow Sect. In those frantic, desperate moments, Fry felt his mind being torn apart, as if a massive blade had been driven into his skull, carving through his thoughts and ripping him open from within. But he endured. He kept going. He didn't even know why. The lives of these soldiers meant nothing to him. If they all died here, he wouldn't have cared. Yet deep inside, Fry believed this war was not his alone. If he let all Imperial forces die here, then who would remain to continue this war? Who would survive the end of it? Even if their lives meant nothing to him, Fry chose to save them, because they still had something to offer. And so the violet light continued to swallow the battlefield, while Snow and the others threw themselves against wave after wave of Ultras, preventing anyone from reaching Fry. Among them, Murgo tried to break through, only to be repelled instantly. Murgo, open your eyes. Look at reality. Snow swung Vermithor, unleashing a flare of pure light. The blast sent Murgo hurling into the distance, crashing through boulders like debris. Yet Murgo rose again. He was durable, unnaturally so. Snow understood then, this half-demon was not normal. Is that monster truly the one you wish to follow? And what will you gain? Freedom? Victory?
No.
You will gain nothing but suffering. Snow's eyes shifted toward the clash in the sky. Weskier versus Adur. That battle was reaching its limit. Weskier was unleashing everything to break free and strike Fry. Adur could fall at any moment. Hurry, Fry. We don't have much time left. Standing firm, Snow raised his radiant shield once more, protecting his friend with everything he had. Murgo watched in silence, and for the first time, he doubted. If Fry truly mastered this power, if he reached his full potential, then perhaps there was still hope for humanity. Fry Starlight, just what are you? By now, Fry had evacuated most of the Imperial soldiers. Only the strongest remained to guard him. Everyone knew he was their only hope. But then, boom! A thunderous shockwave ripped through the battlefield. Weskier burst forth from the shattered remains of Adur's domain, charging straight toward them. Adur had fallen. Fear froze everyone in place. Except one. Don't stop. Save them. Snow hurled himself at Weskier in a blinding flash of light. You are not my equal, Snow. Crack. With a single blow, Weskier shattered Snow's golden shield once again. Die properly this time. His hand reached to erase snow from existence. But before it struck, another hand deflected it. Adur. He had only one arm left. Half his face was gone. But he still stood. I told you, Weskier, you will not win tonight. Adur's strike forced Weskier back. The two clashed again, aura ripping apart the sky itself. You refuse to die, followers of Nameless, even at the end. If death is what you seek, then I shall give it to you. Boom! Each exchange destroyed more of Adur's body. Yet he did not fall. I will stand until my lord completes his task, even if I must fight forever. His loyalty was absolute, not to Fry, but to Nameless, and Fry understood that more clearly than anyone. Yet deep within, he couldn't help but wonder, how could such a monster inspire loyalty this absolute? Followers strong enough to shake the world, yet willing to throw away their lives for him without hesitation. It was a terrifying level of devotion, a devotion that made Fry truly understand the weight of the name Nameless. The one he carried within himself, wearing the mask, standing within the pillar of violet aura. Fry exhaled slowly. I still have much to learn, if I ever wish to reach that level. The road was long, but right now survival was all that mattered. In an instant, everyone close to Fry vanished. Snow, the elite class, Phoenix, the remaining strongest. All of them were transported away by his space manipulation. Only Fry remained, and Adur, who continued fighting Weskier to the bitter end. The Ultras surrounded them from every direction, but none of them could act now. Fry could simply escape at will. In that moment, Adur felt relief. Half his body was gone, and he could no longer stand against the fourth seat. But he had protected his lord. His mission was complete. I'll leave the rest to you, Gehrman. Adur closed his remaining eye. He remembered the day Gehrman gave him this singular task. To hide, to conserve his strength, to wait for this one battle. All those years, for this single moment. It was almost laughable. But Adur had no regrets. He had fulfilled his purpose. He had protected his lord. He had passed on his technique to a worthy successor. Death was no longer something to fear. Weskier was about to finish him. But the killing blow never came. Adur opened his eye in shock. A radiant surge of violet aura wrapped around him, pushing Weskier back. Turning his head, he saw Fry. Arm extended, body glowing with overwhelming power beneath the mask. You will not die here, warrior of the Shadow Sect. With the mask on, Fry looked eerily similar to Nameless himself. I am done watching my allies die for me. Fry still remembered Leora, the Dawn Saint, left behind to fall on her own. They had lost her, even though she was SSS rank. And now Adur was about to be lost as well. A warrior like Adur could mean everything in the battles ahead. Fry refused to allow it. He extended the spatial formation to envelop Adur too. You're coming with me, no matter what it takes. Adur vanished, saved, leaving only Fry in the battlefield of corpses and shadows. Blood poured from beneath the mask. The pressure of maintaining the ability was crushing him. But the aura of that crimson butterfly, the warmth she had gifted him, was the only reason he could still stand. Weskier appeared instantly, hand reaching to tear him apart. But before the blow landed, Fry unleashed another wave of violet spatial force, pushing Weskier back and distorting space around them. Weskier, no, Aegon. Frey's voice trembled with fury as violet light flickered through his eyes. No more schemes from the shadows. I see you clearly this time. You stand before me. You are my enemy. From this point forward, this is a war between humans and demons. Between me and you. Only one of us will walk away alive. The space around Fry twisted. Whether it's me, or Nameless himself, you will die on this earth. The same earth you toyed with for years. The same earth whose people you spat on. Know this, Weskier. Here, before your wretched king's eyes, you will fall. With those final words, Fry vanished completely, leaving behind the armies of the Ultras and Weskier, who hovered quietly above the battlefield. The war between the Empire and the Ultras had ended. The Ultras had forced the Empire out of their lands, but they failed to exterminate them, which meant the war was far from over. The fourth seat had failed to end the conflict. A shocking outcome, yet Weskier was not upset. Follower of Nameless, Gehrman taught you well. He glanced at the shattered remains of Adur's broken vessel. He managed to wound me this time. He had known that the heroes of the past were hiding somewhere. But he did not expect one of Nameless' pillars to be present here. The world had not seen them in ages, but their names remained legendary. Number 1, Gehrman, the perfect vessel. Number 2, Alexander Rybak, master of martial arts. Number 3, Fulgur, the living planet. Number 4, Adur, the shadow executor. All had vanished, except Gehrman. Yet Adur surfaced again, shaking the battlefield. And Fry and Snow themselves had far exceeded every expectation. Weskier was no longer the only one moving pieces across the board. The blue-eyed one remained terrifying. Well, this is not entirely disappointing. Weskier descended slowly, and as he landed, his demonic form dissolved, replaced by the familiar face of Aegon Valyrian. Everything remains within expectations. Weskier, still wearing the form of Aegon, spoke as he turned to the Ultras. From this point on, the war would no longer be a clash of armies, but a direct conflict between humans and demons, and those who followed them. In such a war, Gehrman could not intervene for long. His vessel had already decayed far beyond repair. And that alone was a tremendous advantage for Weskier, because another monster was already drawing near, tearing through space itself as he descended at terrifying speed. Clad in the great Katarina armor, Zebar was returning to the battlefield. And this time it was his true body, not a mere projection. 2 upper demons now existed on Earth at the same time, a first in recorded history, which meant the battles to come would be far more brutal than anything yet seen. On the opposite side of the world, within the Eastern Nightmare Lands, the vast Shadow Sect was alive with a commotion it had not seen in ages. A sanctuary that had remained empty and silent for so long had finally been filled with humans once more. Thanks to Fry, thousands had escaped the massacre and the collapse of Caelid. But the cost was horrifying. Only 4,000 survived. Out of 150,000 who had marched for the Empire, 146,000 had died. The Empire entered the war with 100,000 soldiers, and 50,000 reinforcements led by Aegon later joined. Who would have imagined that their numbers would fall so low? And that was not even counting the countless civilians who perished during the church massacre. In a matter of months, the war had slaughtered millions, and many more stood on the edge of death. Fry was the last to be transported into the Shadow Sect, and the moment he arrived, his consciousness collapsed. His body had been pushed far past its limits. Silence and despair filled the sect. The Empire had lost nearly everything, and the situation within its remaining territory was unknown. For the demons had launched their invasion there as well. But everyone knew one thing: a devastating battle had taken place, because the heroes of the past had risen again. This was the transition from one era of mankind to the next. The elite class gathered around Frey's unconscious form, while others spread through the colossal halls of the sect. And there, waiting silently, were a group of humans who had fought from the shadows for generations. The Readers, those who once observed the world, hidden and forgotten. All of them now stood in silent anticipation, watching Fry, who lay on the ground, unaware of any of this. A crimson butterfly drifted through the air, circling him softly. Snow was the only one who could see her clearly. He did not push her away. He knew who she was. He felt relief, even joy, to see even the faintest trace of her survive. And as he watched her cling to Frey's chest, his mind began to connect the pieces. Could it be? Was Frey the one Audrey had been searching for all along? The thought unsettled him. He knew far less about Frey than he believed. About his power, his origins, his destiny, his connection to that woman. There was so much unknown. And if humanity wished to survive the coming storm, they would have to unravel every unknown truth. Because the war that approached now would be the most violent of all. Eastern Nightmare Lands, Shadow Sect. The territory of the Shadow Sect had now become a refuge for the defeated forces of the Empire who had lost their way. Frey Starlight had saved them, sparing them from death, yet morale was at its absolute lowest. Only a few thousand soldiers survived, and most of them were utterly broken, consumed by despair after what they had witnessed. That much was clear from the way many of them collapsed against the cold walls of the sect, silent and hollow. They had lost countless comrades, and they had been forced to stand in the presence of a rank-for-high demon. Weskir's appearance alone had shattered something inside the hearts of men and redefined their understanding of power. His power was overwhelming beyond comprehension, and just seeing him was enough to strip them of the will to fight. After all, they now understood that they could never accomplish anything against him. Their existence was meaningless before him. Against Weskir, even SS+ powerhouses were nothing but insects. Knowing this, they lost the will to stand and fight. Some fell into despair, while others desperately tried to escape the sect, wanting to return to the Empire to save their families. But black statues blocked every exit. They were imprisoned inside the Shadow Sect, whether they liked it or not. Among them, Snow Lionheart walked the streets of the sect with heavy steps, observing everything. The White Knight of the Earth, the pure vessel, had fought Weskir alongside Frey Starlight, and though his body had suffered greatly in that bitter battle, he was still standing, proving just how far he had come. He had truly become worthy of the title Pure Vessel. For now, Snow was effectively the leader of humanity, their representative in Frey's absence while the latter remained unconscious. After checking on the broken Imperial soldiers, Snow made his way to the borders of the sect where the statues stood. A laughing statue, a weeping one, and a familiar third. The angry statue. Angry. That statue stood at the front, blocking the way out. When Snow approached, the statues turned toward him in unison, as if ready for combat. Angry leading them, Snow stopped walking and they faced each other. His eyes glowed with pure, radiant light as he examined Angry's condition. And in doing so, he perceived the full extent of Angry's power. A true SSS rank aura radiated from him. "So you were holding back then?" Snow murmured, recognizing how foolish he had been the first time he fought Angry in Launder. Back then, Snow couldn't even comprehend Angry's true strength. He had simply thrown himself at him in blind anger, imagining he could win. But now, the situation was completely different. Snow stood calm and unshaken before the statues. Both he and they knew what would happen if he unleashed his power. If he fought seriously, they would not be able to hold him. In other words, the seal imposed by the statues applied to everyone, but not to Snow. And yet, he didn't try to fight. For two reasons. 1. He wanted to wait until Frey woke up, and 2. He understood that these statues were Frey's allies, not enemies. What Adur had done was proof enough of that. Adur was among them now, still alive only because Frey had saved him in the final moment. Though his condition was horrific, anyone who saw him would wonder how he was still breathing at all. The Shadow Sect was incomprehensible. Even Snow knew very little about it, even in his memories as the Pure Vessel. For the sect had risen after his time. So he remained tense, walking cautiously through its dark halls. "I don't know what your purpose is, nor the reason you fight, but I ask you, protect the humans inside this sect, at least until we recover and can fight again." Snow spoke sincerely, showing no hostility. Angry could not speak, but the statue nodded, a silent acknowledgement. "Thank you." Snow bowed faintly and turned away. Heading to the temple at the center of the Shadow Sect, the place Adur had instructed them to lay Fry. Inside, familiar faces waited. The elite class and only Phoenix among the higher-ranking officers. Others, like Iris Sunlight and the remaining members of House Valyrian, had not been allowed to enter. It seemed only those with a certain bond to Fry were permitted to be near him. The temple was massive, and even with everyone present, they barely filled a fraction of it. Fry lay upon a stone altar at the far end of the hall, recovering by Adur's order. Adur himself was there, and it appeared he had been speaking with Ghost just moments ago. But when Snow arrived, Adur turned to him. Once, Adur had been too broken to speak. Now, though his body was ruined beyond reason, he could at least sit upright, fueled by something sheer and unbreakable. Warrior of the Shadow Sect, I hope you are ready to talk, Snow said, having finally lost patience. Adur said nothing at first, but he nodded. He had not expected to survive, and since Fry had saved his life, and since no orders had come from Gehrman, Adur assumed the engineer did not object to him assisting humanity, so he would help them however he could. I know you have many questions, Adur said quietly, but it will be better to wait for Fry Starlight to awaken. He also deserves to hear everything.
No.
Snow cut him off without hesitation. You will speak. Now. Silence fell. The elite class stiffened. Nervous. Adur was terrifying. But Snow did not waver. Adur exhaled slowly. He could not refuse. His body was almost destroyed, only one arm and half a face remaining. Very well. Adur had managed to repair himself to some extent, but he would never return to his peak unless his master returned and restored him personally, meaning Nameless himself. What is it you wish to know? Adur asked. Snow answered immediately. Who are you? What is your connection to Fry? And finally, what is this place exactly? These were the questions weighing most heavily on Snow's mind. Adur responded without hesitation. We are the warriors of the Shadow Sect. We have only one king. Only one master. He has no name and no one knows his true face. The ancients called him Nameless, and Fry Starlight lying there is his vessel and incarnation. In other words, we stand on Fry Starlight's side, which means indirectly we stand on your side as well. So you have no reason to worry, Lightbearer. Adur said this as he slowly rose to his feet. He was extremely tall, forcing Snow to raise his head just to maintain eye contact. My Lord Nameless was the only one who could stand against the Demon King in the past, and he is humanity's only hope against the demons. The power Fry Starlight has revealed so far is merely a faint glimpse of my king's true power. When he reaches his zenith, he will once again be able to stand against the Demon King. Adur walked closer to Frey's resting place. In the past, we formed an alliance with the human heroes to unite our strength and wage war against the demons at the appointed time, the time when Fry Starlight would appear, and preparations for the king's return would be complete. And that time is now. As we speak, the great houses and the strongest warriors of the old era are fighting within the Empire's walls to protect humanity. The war is ongoing, and we have a real chance. His last words shocked nearly everyone who heard them. Who would have imagined that the heads of the Starlight, Moonlight, and Sunlight families were still out there, fighting for them? But Snow was not surprised. He had already known. You say your king is our only hope against Agarath, but he lost, did he not? Snow reasoned calmly. Nameless lost to Agarath, and that happened long ago. From what I know of the Demon King, his greatest ability, the devourer that consumes all things, endlessly strengthens him with no limit. Snow had confronted Agarath in the past as the pure vessel, and he had been utterly defeated. During that battle, he had realized one terrifying truth. Agarath possessed a world-breaking ability. The power of the devouring monster. A monster that grows stronger by consuming others and stealing their abilities. I am certain the Demon King has grown stronger since his battle with Nameless, Even by a small amount, that would be enough. Snow spoke with certainty. Adur did not deny it. He could not. Nameless had sealed Agaroth inside Helmand, but he did not seal his power. Only his presence. Since then, Agaroth had fought many battles with the first upper one. Crimson, meaning Agaroth had not been dormant. He continued to grow. In other words, the Agaroth of today was stronger than the one Nameless once faced. So how do you expect to win with Nameless power alone? Snow asked sharply, especially disturbed by the implication that his friend might simply be a vessel to be overtaken by another being. The conversation left the others speechless. They had never understood even a fraction of the truth until now. In response, Adur looked back at Fry. Fry Starlight is different. What do you mean? Snow frowned. Adur hesitated for a moment, then continued. What I am about to say is only my assumption, because I do not fully understand the plans of my lord or of Gehrman. But what I am certain of is that Fry Starlight is not the same as before. When Nameless returns this time, he will not return in the same state he had when he lost to Agaroth. He will return stronger. Adur spoke with unwavering conviction. Faith, absolute and unshakable. When my lord lost to the Demon King, he devised a long and intricate plan, one only he and Gehrman fully understood. If there is any path to victory, it lies through him and nothing else. Snow fell silent. Was Fry Nameless himself, or a separate existence? What did Adur mean by different? Just what was Fry Starlight? Speaking of the Demon King seems premature when we cannot even defeat the fourth seat and his followers. Snow finally replied, exhaling tiredly. He didn't like any of this talk of Nameless, but he chose to wait. To see Frey's stance first. To focus on the war at hand. You say you fight on our side. Then is your shadow sect prepared to fight alongside humanity in this war? Adur nodded. As long as my lord is among you, we will fight with you to the death. Good, Snow said. I doubt we'll get much use out of you in your current state, but if your fellow warriors are as strong as what you displayed before, that will be more than enough for me. He turned to the elite class. My friends, listen. I know everything that has happened is overwhelming, but you must adapt. What comes next will be far worse than anything before. The time for games was over. The battles to come would be SSS rank and above. Snow set his immediate goal, break through to SSS rank. Only then could he begin reclaiming the half of the light soul that Agaroth had stolen. That half was currently held by Nito. Ranked 9th among the upper demons despite not being a demon at all. Agaroth could copy abilities and grant them to his followers, but Snow was sure he had not bestowed the light soul, simply because he could not use it. It was the one power that was fundamentally anti-demon. In other words, if Geppetto really gave the light spirit to Nito, then that would be the true light spirit Snow had been searching for all this time. The legends about Nameless were astonishing, yes. But Snow had no intention of relying on him, nor on whatever plan the warriors of the Shadow Sect were weaving. Snow had already chosen his own path, and he would walk it to the end. There were still many things he did not understand. But what he did know was enough for now. Enough to push his strength even further. That was the resolve of the White Knight of Earth. Meanwhile, Fry Starlight still lay unconscious, waiting for the moment his eyes would open so he could return to the war once more. Far away from the Shadow Sect, the situation inside the Empire was in chaos. Geppetto had descended upon human lands with an army of the dead at his command, accompanied by several powerful high demons. The invasion was rapid and overwhelming. So much so that countless humans were slaughtered in the very first hour. However, soon after, the Empire witnessed the return of ancient champions who rose to meet the invasion. And they slaughtered an enormous number of Geppetto's corpses in retaliation. What the hell is happening? Geppetto cursed, feeling dozens upon dozens of his puppet corpses shatter, the backlash tearing into him like thorns of ice. That was the effect of the old heroes returning. From the Starlight family, a terrifying swordsman appeared, a master of the Stardust style, refined to an overwhelming, celestial level. He moved like a falling star across the battlefield. Swift, radiant, annihilating entire battalions of corpses alone. Likewise, another figure rose from the Sunlight family, even more brutal in nature, a warrior who unleashed the flames of Helios upon the demons. A blaze that burned hotter than the sun, scorching entire formations from existence. His combat style was violent, explosive, a raging inferno that carved massive craters across the battlefield. These two caused devastation unlike anything seen since the First Age of War. As for the Moonlight family, the gates of the Grand Library opened. Thousands were evacuated within its walls. Inside, the blind librarian Rem stood watch, accompanied by a young girl, one who, by herself, held back wave after wave of demons. Who would have thought that the little girl, Azura, could wield power comparable to Semiramis, the first matriarch of the Moonlight line? These three alone were enough to inflict deep wounds on the demonic forces. And that was more than enough to ignite fury in Geppetto. After hiding all this time, they finally crawl back out. Huh? Good. Very good. Geppetto laughed softly, and then turned toward the man standing behind him. The one who will slaughter humanity this time will be a human just like them. Go. Show them despair. Exterminate them to the last one. The masked man stepped forward. Then, slowly, he removed the cloth covering his face. A man in his early 40s with a light beard and long black hair. His eyes burned with a blinding white shine, twisted with a deep, consuming darkness. The true star, Abraham Starlight. It is time for you to step onto the stage once more. Geppetto laughed, ecstatic as he gestured for Abraham to move out and destroy the heads of the great families. This corpse is the greatest treasure I have ever taken. It will be my ticket into the top 10 high demons. Geppetto grinned, eyes filled with ambition and madness. Rank 13 intended to climb higher. Much higher. And he would do it through war. The humans did not yet know that the brightest star they once revered had returned not as a savior, but as their executioner. Within the walls of the Empire, a brutal battle had just revealed its true colors. Humanity had been struck by a full-scale invasion. Geppetto and his army of the dead, accompanied by a host of powerful demons. These were not noble demons. These were the true demons. Feral, monstrous forms of gray, corpse-like flesh, elongated horns, vast bone wings, and claws like butchered steel. This was the original demon race that humanity had not witnessed in hundreds of years. Yet here they were again, devouring the earth. At first, countless humans were slaughtered. Entire districts collapsed in the span of a single hour. But then, everything changed. Heroes rose again. To the east, a tall, broad-shouldered man with pure white hair and dark black eyes appeared. He looked to be in his 40s, his aura overwhelming. That man alone slaughtered the demons in front of him. Stardust style, cannon of light. From his sword, a beam of radiance tore through the night, purifying thousands of corpses and demons in a single strike. His presence rekindled hope. Retreat to the Aklas Mountains. The Empire is no longer safe, he shouted, recognized by some who had seen his portrait. That was Nova Starlight, the first star of the Starlight family. A veteran who once stood beside the hero Kazis, a survivor of the Age of War. Nova was overwhelmingly powerful, capable of defending the entire eastern Starlight region alone. But suddenly, he noticed another advancing army of enemies. Demons never change, no matter how many ages pass. Nova cursed, preparing to strike again. But before he could, a scorching tide of flames swept across the battlefield, incinerating the demons in an instant. Nova recognized those flames immediately. The eternal flame, wielded by only one man. What took you so long, Nova? Weren't you always the fastest among us? Standing atop a nearby cliff, Enver Sunlight, founder of the Sunlight family, planted his foot down. His hair was blazing crimson, and his expression was severe. Amusingly, he appeared younger than Iris Sunlight, one of his own descendants. Enver, Nova called out as the man leapt down beside him. You already cleared the Sunlight territory? Enver nodded. They weren't strong. I came here because I assumed this region would be worse. Looks like I was wrong. He exhaled, extending his arm. We've been dormant far too long. Waking up like this feels strange. We haven't fought in hundreds of years. It's natural, Nova replied, gazing into the distant horizon. Centuries ago, each of them sealed themselves away in unique ways to survive until the destined moment. Except for Semiramis Moonlight, who abandoned her body entirely, the others preserved their forms in hiding. Enver had slumbered deep beneath volcanic ground, his skin now tinted bronze from ages of burning heat. They had awaited one signal, one presence. You felt it too? Enver asked. Nova nodded. A familiar aura, calling directly to me. I knew then. The time had come. That alien, the so-called engineer. Enver muttered, referring to Gehrman. Which means the foretold one has finally appeared. The one destined to end this war and offer us our only chance. Nova spoke with cautious anticipation. They had all waited for one person to emerge. What kind of person would he be? How would he lead them to victory? So many had died to make this moment possible. Let's hope that man's prophecy wasn't a mistake. Enver sighed, placing a hand on Nova's shoulder. Let's find Semiramis and the others first. Agreed. They were about to move. But a blind old man stepped toward them. Gentlemen, there is no need for concern. The one you awaited has already appeared. They turned, and did not recognize him at first. But his aura was unmistakable. You, Avalon? Enver exclaimed, stunned. Nova remained calm. Time has not been kind to you. Avalon's appearance was withered, empty compared to the man he once was. Ever since the tragedy at Helmand. Time has not been kind to anyone. I have come to lead you to the Shadow Sect. There is no time to waste. Enver narrowed his eyes. What about Semiramis? And where is Zephyr? Avalon paused. Semiramis is currently defending the Moonlight capital. We cannot move her yet. As for Zephyr, silence fell. Zephyr. The forgotten warrior erased from history. Avalon closed his eyes, remembering that terrifying man. Zephyr left Earth long ago. He refused to hide. Meaning? Nova asked, taken aback. Avalon nodded. His fate is unknown. Neither Nova nor Enver expected that. Every member of Kazis's unit had agreed to the plan. Zephyr was one of them. No one imagined he would be the one to go against them after they sealed themselves away. Damn it, Zephyr was the strongest of us. Losing him will cripple our combat strength. Enver cursed, but Avalon shook his head. We should move. There will be time to discuss this once we reach the Shadow Sect. Avalon said, and both Nova and Enver agreed. However, just as the three were about to depart, they froze. A crushing pressure slammed down onto their shoulders, forcing their eyes wide in shock. The surprising part wasn't simply how powerful the pressure was, but the fact that it wasn't coming from a demon. It was something else entirely. Slowly, very slowly, they turned back. There, standing atop a massive hill, looking down at them with a cold, disdainful gaze, as though a king had descended to look upon worthless insects, was the source of the pressure. All three were stunned, but for entirely different reasons. Enver was shocked that a human could possess such overwhelming force. Nova, on the other hand, recognized something else immediately. The man was using the Stardust style. He didn't even need to fight him to see it. The 10 stellar nodes were blazing around him, clear as the sun. He's at my level. No, wait. Nova narrowed his eyes. Both of them had reached the peak 10 stars. But there was one defining difference. Nova's stars were calm, serene. This man's stars were burning. That realization carved a grim expression onto Nova's face.
Impossible.
Meanwhile, Avalon's fist tightened, for he was the only one who recognized the man. That is, Abraham Starlight. Avalon spoke the name in disbelief. Nova and Enver turned to him in shock. So he's one of your descendants, Nova. Doesn't that make him an ally? Enver asked. Nova laughed, dark and humorless. Does an ally bring this kind of suffocating killing intent? There was no doubt. Abraham was not with them. He had come to kill. What in the hell is happening? Avalon cursed. Abraham was supposed to have died long ago. So how was he here? And stronger than before? It doesn't matter. Whoever he is now. He's our enemy, Nova said, raising his guard to the maximum. The others did the same. They stared him down for a breath. And then, Abraham Starlight simply vanished, as if he had never existed on the hill at all. In the next instant, all three faces drained of color, turning cold and pale. He was standing among them. None of them had tracked the movement, and they were all SSS rank. Realizing the threat, all three moved in unison, attacking at once. Nova forged a colossal blade of starlight that radiated like a sun. Enver's fist erupted in a blazing inferno, cracking the air around him. Avalon's sword aimed straight for Abraham's throat. 3 overwhelming strikes, converging on one man. For a moment it looked as though they struck. But Abraham simply leaned, pivoted, and twisted, leaving behind afterimages. All 3 attacks passed through shadows. And then, with terrifying speed, Abraham extended both arms, releasing a shockwave of raw aura that blasted all 3 in different directions. The aura wave looked like a gravitational repulsion. But it was simply Abraham's unrestrained power. He summoned a sword of light and flashed toward Nova. Abraham was not conscious. He was nothing more than a weapon, designed to target the strongest enemy present. And the strongest there was me. Nova gritted his teeth as their swords collided, producing a blinding flare. They vanished, moving at the speed of light. Stardust style against Stardust style. Their battle was a mirrored reflection. A perfect copy facing its original. From afar, Enver and Avalon watched for an opening. It's absurd. It's like watching 2 versions of the same man fight. Enver murmured. Avalon's expression darkened. Nova is the more skilled. He invented Stardust style, perfected it. But Avalon clenched his fist. The difference in pure power is massive. On that front, Abraham held clear dominance. Boom! A burst of radiant light erupted, hurling Nova backward from a crushing blow. Nova recovered midair and charged once more, joined now by Avalon. Abraham summoned a second sword, parrying both of their attacks simultaneously. Starlight slashing and shattering around him. Enver seized that moment, appearing before Abraham, fist blazing, ready to strike. But Abraham moved first. A kick, faster than the speed of light, struck Enver in the face before his punch could land. The blow launched Enver into the sky. Then, manipulating his aura with impossible precision, Abraham's hands tore through space itself, ripping it apart and leaving deep bloody gashes across both Nova and Avalon. The 2 warriors regained their footing instantly, their auras erupting as they charged back in. Boom! The battlefield quaked, and a massive inferno rose toward the sky as Enver unleashed his full power. Elios! War mode! Enver roared, surging forward amidst a storm of blazing violet flames whose heat could melt the earth itself. Despite that, Abraham met him head-on, matching, no, overpowering all 3 of them simultaneously. Who the hell is this bastard? Is there really a human with this kind of power? Enver shouted, hands split open and bleeding after every exchange. Abraham was a terrifying monster. Even Chun Ma and Casus Valerian, at the peak of their primes, could not compare to what he was now. The realization sent chills through all 3 of them. He's using the ignition. Nova yelled. Enver froze. The what? Nova was the only one who understood what they were facing. Ignition is the final stage of the Stardust style. It literally means sacrificing your life to gain overwhelming power for a short time. Nova himself had never attempted it. Activating ignition meant certain death. It was supposed to be a temporary, self-destructive state. But Abraham was controlling it perfectly. That's impossible. And then, Nova noticed something far more horrifying. When Abraham's skin tore, it did not bleed. No blood. No flesh. Only light poured out. Aura. His entire body was made of pure aura. "You've got to be kidding me," Enver growled as they continued fighting. Their opponent had a body forged entirely from aura, while maintaining ignition without dying. That should have been impossible for any living being. But Abraham made it reality, all because of one thing. The absolute manipulator. Far away, seated casually and watching with amusement, Weskier began laughing. "Abraham Starlight is truly extraordinary, far beyond what I expected." At the end of his life, he entered that ignition state. His power spiked across multiple realms at once. But that form guarantees death. At that moment, Abraham's bizarre ability absorbed the ignition, stabilizing it. For a brief time, he became a miracle that should never exist. Weskier's smile sharpened. But one thing betrayed him. He was human. Weskier rested his chin on his hand, recalling the battle. His human body couldn't withstand it. The strain killed him. The absolute manipulator had perfectly mastered ignition. But Abraham died before finishing the transformation. I struggled greatly to preserve and restore his body afterward. But the result was worth every second. Weskier's grin widened. Now, Abraham Starlight has returned, thanks to Geppetto's power, and that impossible strength is fully his. Which means, Weskier declared without hesitation, the current Abraham Starlight is qualified to challenge the 10 high seats and the 7 great powers. Abraham Starlight had always been a star beyond measure, a miracle in human form. If not for his humanity, he would have been one of the 7 great powers already. Who would have thought his greatest weakness was simply being human? Ah ha 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 ha. Weskier laughed madly, while Abraham overwhelmed the ancient human heroes. Weskier had exploited the engineer's absence, seizing control of that monstrous warrior and turning him into a weapon of his own. A fatal mistake the blue-eyed one would not forgive. Meanwhile, far away, in a concealed place, Gehrman sat quietly, attuning himself to his aura, preparing for the inevitable. He knew exactly what had happened to Abraham. He had seen the battlefield unfold, yet he did not react. Not even slightly, as if he had expected this. Gehrman slowly opened his eyes and rose. "It is time for the high demons to fall dead once more." He spoke in a cold, resonant tone, and vanished. The clash of legends had begun, and the storm of god-slaying battles loomed overhead, within the borders of the Empire, specifically in the Starlight Province. A cataclysmic battle unfolded between 3 ancient heroes and a monster reborn from legend. Abraham Starlight, the prodigy of House Starlight, had become a merciless weapon, a being of light and death whose speed and strength defied comprehension. His power stood on a level entirely beyond the 3, leaving Nova Starlight, the very creator of the Stardust technique, in pure disbelief. Never did I imagine seeing my own art wielded like this. Just thinking about replicating such mastery made Nova's head ache. Controlling ignition shouldn't have been possible for anyone. "Your lineage brought us ruin," Nova growled in sunlight, his body engulfed in divine fire. "At this rate, we'll fall pathetically." With a roar, he unleashed the blazing might of Helios, the eternal flame itself. To die by his hands the moment we awaken from our seals would be a humiliation. He laughed, a low, burning laugh, as his aura erupted outward. "A humiliation I cannot bear. Eternal flame, Helios state, dusk of the solar mass." While Nova and Avalon clashed head-on with Abraham, Inver retreated a few steps, gathering his full strength. His fire turned blue, then violet, until it burned like a newborn sun. He hurled it toward Abraham, a miniature star meant to annihilate all before it. The explosion deafened the heavens. Waves of violet flame devoured the battlefield, melting the very ground. Both Nova and Avalon withdrew to avoid the inferno. That should at least hurt him a little, but the hope was in vain. From within the blazing chaos, Abraham emerged, walking calmly, his stellar aura forming a barrier that rejected even the eternal flame. "That's infuriating," Inver muttered, scowling. "All my life I've never seen a human like this. Terrifying and magnificent both. Yet he stands with the enemy. None of them could grasp his true strength, but his mere presence evoked memories of the greatest demons of history. In those fleeting moments, Nova's mind worked faster than lightning. "I'm at the peak of SSS Stage 2. Inver and Avalon are around the same. Even together, we can't bring him down. That could mean only one thing. He's Stage 4, or at least the peak of Stage 3. If that was true, then Abraham's power rivaled that of Zebar, one of the high demons. And with his world-breaking ability, his body, made entirely of aura, circulated power with inhuman efficiency. The realization chilled Nova's heart. "I hate to admit it, but we can't defeat him in a straight fight. To win, we'd have to sacrifice ourselves. And even then, I'm not sure it would work." Inver's eyes widened. The only method Nova implied was ignition, sacrificing one's life for temporary godlike power. But even if Nova used it, he would still be weaker than Abraham, who had mastered ignition through his absolute manipulator ability. Still, Nova's resolve hardened. There was no room for hesitation now. "Let's end this." He unleashed his full might. In that instant, the star-dust technique shone in its purest form. Nova raised his blade, radiant as a sun upon the earth. "Now, unleash everything you have." The three legends struck together. Star-dust technique, ultimate art, stellar tempest, eternal flame, Elios, infinite inferno, light formation, ultimate art, dawn severance. Their combined strike consumed the sky. Three ultimate powers entwining into one overwhelming cataclysm. Abraham charged forward into the heart of it without slowing down. Star aura, flame aura, and light aura converged to swallow him whole. His instincts flared. Pure survival. He crossed both blades, calling upon a torrent of starlight that engulfed his entire body. Then, with a brilliance that split the heavens, his aura condensed into a colossal radiant sphere. A living star. Nova froze, his eyes wide. "That's Stardust technique, but it's not mine." This move was something new. Something Abraham had created himself, much like Nameless Judgment once had been for Fry Starlight. Encased within his blazing sun, Abraham met the trio's combined strike head-on. The collision shattered the land. Space itself groaned under the force. But when the dust cleared, what remained was a white dome, a radiant shell shaped like a star, untouched by destruction. Within it, Abraham Starlight still stood. There he stood, Abraham Starlight, unscathed. Not a single wound marked his body, and even the ground beneath his feet remained untouched. His aura was overwhelming, terrifying. Slowly, Abraham dissipated the radiant star surrounding him, nullifying his absolute defense. It was clear now. The battle was over. The combined might of three legendary warriors hadn't been enough to even scratch him. In other words, they could never defeat him. Abraham had emerged unharmed from their ultimate assault, yet he quickly realized what his opponents had done. Nova Starlight had known from the start that victory was impossible, and in that moment he'd chosen the only option left: retreat. Now the battlefield was silent. Abraham stood alone. The others were gone. They had escaped at the last second, using the cover of their joint attack. The very one Abraham had chosen to defend against. Had he retaliated instead, they might not have survived. But they had gambled on his choice to defend, and they were right. Even so, Abraham didn't intend to let them go so easily. He expanded his aura over vast distances, searching for even the faintest trace of them. Yet in the end he found nothing. They had vanished completely. A sign that one of them must have possessed a teleportation ability of some sort. With their disappearance, Abraham's senses gradually settled, and his aura retracted. He stood alone amidst the ruin. He had won, yes, but he had failed to kill his enemies. There was nothing left to do but withdraw and await the next battlefield he would be unleashed upon. Far away, beyond the Empire's borders, within the Shadow Sect, which had sheltered the last survivors of the war, someone slowly opened his eyes. Fry Starlight had awakened. He had fully recovered, surpassing the exhaustion brought by pushing nameless powers to their absolute limit. When Fry came to, he found himself inside the temple of the Shadow Sect. The place was eerily quiet. Everyone else was scattered, occupied with the aftermath of the recent catastrophe. The only one near him was Uriel, who had clearly tended to his injuries and kept his body stable after the battle with Weskier. Doing so had required her to maintain that golden angel for far too long, draining her completely. Now she lay asleep beside him. Seeing her there, Fry rose quietly and draped his cloak over her, covering her shoulders before leaving the chamber. A sharp headache lingered, but his mind quickly refocused. In that instant, one thought echoed louder than any other. Ada, his sister. Her name still glowed crimson on his system interface, meaning she was in danger. Fry ignored everything else. He was ready to move immediately until something stopped him. In the dimness ahead, within the temple's shadows, a crimson butterfly drifted silently, scattering glimmering red dust as it circled him, urging him to follow. He recognized it instantly. It belonged to the one who had saved him before. Without hesitation, he followed. The butterfly guided him gracefully through the dark halls, to a hidden passage leading to an abandoned sector atop the black mountain on which the Shadow Sect had been built. "Where are you taking me?" Fry muttered, wary but curious. Moments later, the butterfly halted midair. Then its body dissolved, falling like glowing red dust. From that light, a form began to take shape. A woman, radiant and calm. Her figure solidified gradually until she stood before him. A woman in her late 20s, wearing a long crimson dress. Her beauty was striking. Red eyes, flowing scarlet hair, and an aura that felt strangely familiar. Though Fry had never seen her before, something about her stirred a deep sense of recognition. Face to face, the woman smiled faintly. "At last, we meet, after all these years." Her voice carried a gentle sorrow, the weight of endless waiting. "Who are you?" Fry asked, ignoring her words, seeking clarity. "My name is Audrey. Does it sound familiar?" At that name, Frey's eyes widened. He knew it, but not in the way she expected. Audrey, the name of one of the central heroines. The strongest among them, rivaling Snow himself at his peak. He'd written her into his story once, never imagining he would meet her like this. But this Audrey didn't match her legend. The woman before him wasn't the fierce, indomitable warrior who shattered demons and defied gods. Her eyes were soft, sorrowful. She looked less like a warrior and more like an ordinary girl, fragile and kind. "This is confusing," Fry muttered, unable to make sense of it all. Then, almost unconsciously, he released a faint wave of aura, probing into her presence. That was when he understood. "Your current strength allows you to see it, Fry. You're not foolish. You can tell this is nothing more than a projection, a fragment of my consciousness." Audrey's tone was calm as she stepped closer. "So this isn't your real body?" "No," she admitted softly. What stood before him was only a temporary manifestation. A butterfly that had escaped Helmand, carrying a fragment of her awareness. Her true body had no idea this meeting was even happening. In reality, the real Audrey was broken, trapped in endless torment, used by the demons as an eternal source of aura. She no longer knew what was real, nor that she had saved Fry and Snow at all. Thousands of years of agony had shattered her mind. And now this single fragment, this butterfly, was all that remained of the woman once called the Crimson Saint. This is confusing, Fry muttered, unable to make sense of it all. Then, almost unconsciously, he released a faint wave of aura, probing into her presence. That was when he understood. Your current strength allows you to see it, Fry. You're not foolish. You can tell this is nothing more than a projection, a fragment of my consciousness. Audrey's tone was calm as she stepped closer. So this isn't your real body? No, she admitted softly. What stood before him was only a temporary manifestation. A butterfly that had escaped Helmand, carrying a fragment of her awareness. Her true body had no idea this meeting was even happening. In reality, the real Audrey was broken, trapped in endless torment, used by the demons as an eternal source of aura. She no longer knew what was real, nor that she had saved Fry and Snow at all. Thousands of years of agony had shattered her mind. And now this single fragment, this butterfly, was all that remained of the woman once called the Crimson Saint. Her body was desecrated and broken, but her mind, her very consciousness, was far worse. Naturally, Fry knew none of this, yet realizing that the woman before him was merely a fragment. A projection made it easier to understand why this Audrey felt so different from the one he knew. Still, something else lingered in his thoughts. Have we met before? You seem familiar, and you saved my life. Mine and Snow's. I owe you for that. Frey's tone was uncertain, as though unsure how to speak to her, or what to make of the strange warmth he felt toward this woman. Audrey shook her head gently. Yes, we have met before, and you don't need to thank me, because you've saved me countless times yourself. So many that I've lost count. She smiled softly as she stepped closer. Frey's confusion only deepened. He didn't remember any of that. There's so much I want to tell you, so much to say, but I don't have much time. I've already given too much of my strength to you and Snow just to remain here. Even sustaining her temporary form was becoming unbearable. Her energy was fading rapidly. So with what little time I have left, I'll say this, Fry. The seal on Agaroth is weakening. If things continue as they are, the Demon King will break free long before you regain your full power. Her voice was urgent, firm. Frey's expression darkened instantly. What are you talking about? And so, Audrey told him everything. The truth that shattered the silence between them. The stronger Fry became, the weaker the seal grew. Agaroth's might was so overwhelming that he wouldn't need to wait until Fry became the new Nameless. He could escape even sooner. That was Audrey's first warning. But before Fry could even process it, she spoke again. Faster, more desperate. Be careful, Fry. The Demon King isn't the only one you must fear. Another being, just as dangerous, is trying to return to our world. One we all sacrificed everything to destroy. She reached out, cupping Frey's face with both hands. Be wary of Odin, Fry. Don't confront him. Not until you reach the 7th stage of SSS rank. Not until your true power returns. Her body began to flicker, fragments of her crimson light scattering into the wind, but she kept speaking despite it. Fry struggled to follow her words. His mind was spinning. The revelation about the Demon King was heavy enough. Now another enemy, one he'd never even heard of? Odin created the Great Ones. They're merely tools, extensions of his will, designed to prepare this world for his return. Long ago, he lost his physical form in a war so ancient it's been erased from memory. The strongest warriors of that era united to destroy him, and we succeeded, or so we thought. But Odin didn't die. His essence endured. A spiritual presence beyond anyone's reach. Her voice trembled now, not from fear, but remembrance. Audrey had been there. She had fought Odin herself. Alongside Agaroth of all beings. There's nothing you can do about him right now, Fry. Just be aware. Remember that he exists. Odin. A monster the world had forgotten. The calamity whose name had once brought an end to entire civilizations. If he ever returned, only the Demon King would be strong enough to oppose him. Audrey continued, desperate to share everything she could before her time ran out. Fry, the world is vast, and your enemies are countless. They will deceive you, twist you, push you to your limits. But I won't let you walk blind any longer. Her voice cracked with emotion. You are important, Fry. Never underestimate yourself. Never belittle who you are. You're the most crucial existence in this world. There's so much more I want to tell you. So many things I've buried inside me for so long. But I don't have the time. How painful this is. A tear fell from Audrey's eye, her final tear, as her body began to collapse. Audrey, Frey's voice faltered, still trying to grasp what he'd just heard. But she had no time left. I will return, Frey. I won't leave you to face them alone. I'll come back. No matter what it takes. She shouted her final vow. Then took one last step forward and threw herself into his arms. Before he could even react, her body disintegrated mid-motion, never allowing their lips to meet. Only crimson dust remained, scattering into the air, glowing faintly as it ascended toward the heavens. Frey stood there, motionless, watching it fade. Agaroth, Odin, what the hell is happening to this world? He clenched his fists as the ground trembled around him. It felt as though fate itself had begun to spin again, pulling him toward endless battles, toward the summit of existence, toward the greatest beings this world had ever known. The feeling was overwhelming, ominous, inevitable,